The desert awakens. The desert was an endless sea of gold, each dune rising and falling like frozen waves in an ocean that had long forgotten the memory of water. From horizon to horizon, nothing broke the line between sky and earth, except for the shifting shimmer of heat. The traveler walked slowly, each step sinking into the soft sand. His figure was small against the vast immensity, a single soul swallowed by silence. The strap of his satchel cut into his shoulder, and his waterskin, already half empty, slapped against his side with each weary movement. The sun had only just begun its descent, but the air already carried the weary chill of coming night. Above, the sky deepened into indigo, and the first stars began to pierce through the fading veil of light. They gleamed sharper than he remembered from any place before. Here, in this barren land, the heavens felt nearer, almost close enough to touch. A desert did not seem lifeless. It pulsed with something ancient, something older than memory. Each gust of wind carried more than sand. It carried whispers, not words he could understand, but tones, murmurs, fragments of something just beyond his grasp. He paused at the crest of a dune, gazing outward. The desert stretched without end, but far on the horizon, he thought he saw a faint glow, a shimmer, not like fire, not like sun, but like moonlight caught in water. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, but when he looked again, it was gone. Still, the impression remained in his chest, like a heartbeat that did not belong to him. He whispered softly, the sound of his own voice startling him in the vast quiet. "This place is alive." And though no reply came, he felt the desert listening. The first nightfall as twilight surrendered to night, the desert transformed. The blistering heat dissolved into sharp cold, and the sand under his boots grew brittle and hard. Shadows lengthened into strange shapes, stretching longer than seemed possible, bending unnaturally as though they were alive. The traveler gathered what little brushwood he carried, and built a small fire in the shelter of a dune. Its flame flickered, weakly, fragile, against the immensity of night. Beyond the circle of light, darkness pressed close, heavy and infinite. Above him, the stars spilled across the sky in a dazzling cascade. They were brighter than he had ever seen, not faint twinkles, but radiant fires, etched into the heavens with startling clarity. Constellations he recognized seemed altered, their shapes bending into new patterns, as though the desert itself had redrawn the sky. He could not look away. The longer he stared, the stronger the sensation became. The stars were watching him. The fire cracked, startling him. He leaned closer to its warmth, but the whispers returned, drifting on the wind, low and melodic. "Turn back. Keep walking. You are not the first." He froze, his hands trembling. The voice that lingered last cut deepest, because it was not strange, nor faint. It was his mother's voice, soft and warm, long lost to time. "My son, why have you come here?" The traveler's chest ached. He closed his eyes, gripping his knees tightly, refusing to answer. For a moment, he wanted nothing more than to believe, but when he opened his eyes again, there was only the fire, the sand, and the endless stars. He whispered to himself, voice trembling, "This desert remembers more than I do." The fire burned lower, but the desert remained awake, listening. Whispers beneath the moon climbed slowly, pale and distant, but its light stretched far across the sand. The traveler wrapped his cloak around his shoulders and listened. The fire had gone quiet now, its embers fading into dull red stones. What filled the silence was the wind, soft at first, then rising in a low hum, like a choir hidden beneath the dunes. The voices returned, clearer this time. "You walk where others have fallen. The sands, remember. You will forget, too." The traveler pressed his hands against his ears, but the words did not stop. They were not spoken aloud. They were spoken within him, threading into the marrow of his bones. He staggered to his feet, heart pounding. His eyes scanned the dunes, empty, silent. Yet he felt watched, as though thousands of unseen eyes lingered just beyond the edge of the dark. The urge to flee tugged at him, but his feet did not move. Instead, he found himself whispering back into the void, "If you remember, then tell me what I have forgotten." The wind stilled instantly. For one heartbeat, the desert held its breath. Then, a long sigh swept over the sands, carrying no words, only the sound of sorrow, endless and heavy. It pressed against him, and he dropped to his knees, gripping the sand with both hands. His breath came in ragged bursts. He could not say why, but tears blurred his vision. He was not weeping for himself, but for something vast. something that had been lost to time itself. When he finally lifted his head, he saw it again, the shimmer. Far away, barely visible, but undeniable, a glow on the horizon, silver and steady, like moonlight caught in water. And for the first time, he knew it was not a trick of his mind. The mirage of memory. At dawn, the traveler's steps carried him deeper into the desert. The horizon shifted endlessly, dunes rising and falling in silent rhythm. He followed no map now, only the memory of that silver glow. The sun rose with merciless fire, the heat burning against his skin, his flask already near empty. His throat ached, each swallow dry and painful. It was then that the desert offered him its cruelest gift, a mirage. Ahead, water glistened, a pool deep and blue, surrounded by palms heavy with fruit. The reflection of the sky sparkled on its surface. He stumbled forward, half sobbing, the sight piercing straight into his hunger and thirst. He dropped to his knees at the edge, scooping sand in his hands. The illusion shattered instantly. Grains slipping between his fingers, the palms dissolved into haze. The pool evaporated into dust. The traveler fell forward, clutching the hot earth, his lips cracking as a broken laugh escaped him. The desert mocked him, and yet, within that despair, he heard it again. Closer, do not stop. The stars wait. This time, the voices were not cruel. They were soft, urging, almost kind. The traveler wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, forcing himself to rise. His legs trembled, but he moved forward again. The mirage was gone, but the faint shimmer, the true light, pulsed once more on the horizon. The strangers trailed by afternoon. As the dunes shifted beneath the burning sky, the traveler noticed something unusual. Footprints pressed deep into the sand, moving in the same direction he now walked, larger than his own, heavier, perhaps from someone carrying a great burden. His pulse quickened. He crouched, running his hand along the impressions. They were recent. The wind had not yet claimed them. He was not alone. Rising, he scanned the horizon. No figures moved across the sands. No caravan appeared in the distance. Only silence. But the prince remained, proof of another soul wandering these endless wastes. Was it another seeker, drawn by the shimmer, or something else, something born of the desert's illusions? He followed the trail with cautious steps, each footprint a silent question. His heart wavered between fear and hope. For if another walked this desert, then perhaps he was not entirely lost. The sun dipped low, shadows stretching long across the dunes. Still, he pressed forward, chasing both the shimmer and the stranger who walked before him. The stars drew near that night. When he rested again, he built no fire. He wanted no barrier of flame between himself and the sky. The stars blazed above, more brilliant than ever. They did not seem fixed in place, but shifting, rearranging themselves, drawing faint lines of light that curved into a path across the heavens. The traveler traced the glowing trail with his eyes, following it downward to the horizon. And there, where the starlight touched the earth, the shimmer waited. Closer now, brighter, but something moved between him and that glow. Shadows, tall, thin, stretched unnaturally across the sand. They glided silently, faceless and black, darker than the night itself. The traveler's breath caught. His hand fell to the dagger at his side, though he knew it would be useless against such forms. The shadows did not advance. They only stood, heads tilted toward the oasis light, as though they too were drawn to it. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, they melted back into the dunes, leaving only silence behind. The traveler whispered into the cold air, "I am not the only one who seeks." You and the desert, as always, gave no reply. The weight of silence. The third night in the desert arrived with a silence heavier than before. The traveler sat on the crest of a dune, cloak pulled tight, eyes fixed on the line of horizon where the shimmer had last appeared. The air was still, too still. Even the wind had abandoned its whisper. The silence pressed against him like a stone, and for the first time, he felt something close to fear. He whispered aloud, as though to remind himself he was real. That sound could still exist here. "I am still here. I am still walking." The words vanished instantly, swallowed by the dunes. The desert did not echo. It did not respond. In that silence, his thoughts grew louder, spilling forward like an unstoppable tide. He remembered fragments of his past, a riverbank where he once played as a child, the smell of bread rising from his mother's oven, the face of a friend he had not spoken to in years. But even as he grasped for them, the memories slipped away. They blurred at the edges, growing faint, dissolving, as though the desert itself was feeding on them. The realization chilled him more than the night wind. If he stayed long enough, would he forget everything? Would the desert strip him of himself until nothing remained but a nameless wanderer? He looked to the stars again. They burned too brightly, too intently, as though they saw through him. "If you take my memories," he murmured, "then give me something in return." The desert remained silent, but his heart beat louder, as though something deep beneath the sands had heard. The carved stone the next morning, exhaustion weighed heavily on him. His flask was nearly empty. His steps dragged, but he forced himself forward, chasing both the shimmer and the fading trail of footprints left by the stranger. It was then he stumbled upon something. Unexpected dot. A stone dot half buried in the sand, weathered and worn, but unmistakably shaped by human hands. He dropped to his knees, brushing the grit away. The surface revealed lines, carvings, etched long ago, symbols he did not understand, curved and spiraled, like stars arranged in unfamiliar constellations. His breath caught. The desert was not empty. It had never been empty. This was proof of those who had come before, seekers, wanderers, perhaps pilgrims, those who had walked the same path, searching for the same shimmer. His fingers traced the markings, the stone warmed beneath the sun. For a moment, the carvings seemed to glow faintly, as though reacting to his touch. And then the vision came, not with sound, not with movement, but with feeling. He saw a caravan, dozens of travelers crossing the desert under a banner of stars. Their faces were obscured, blurred by time, but their eyes shone with purpose. They carried torches, their flames steady despite the wind. They moved toward the same shimmer, drawn as he was. But unlike him, they did not walk alone. The vision faded, leaving only the stone, cold and silent once more. The traveler leaned back, heart pounding. The desert was showing him its memory, or perhaps lending him one of his own that had been long forgotten. Either way, he understood one thing clearly now. He was part of something far larger than himself. The return of the footprints. By midday, heat shimmered across the dunes, the air thick with distortion. The traveler shielded his eyes with his scarf, searching for the trail of footprints he had found before. For hours, there was nothing. The sand erased all signs of life with cruel efficiency. He began to wonder if the footprints had been a trick of his tired mind, another illusion like the false oasis. But then, cresting a dune, he found them again, clear, deep, recent, and this time they were joined by something else. Beside the footprints ran another set of marks, lines drawn by something, being dragged. Perhaps a staff, perhaps a burden too heavy to carry. The traveler crouched, tracing them with his hand. His throat tightened. Whoever walked ahead was struggling. He hesitated. Part of him wanted to call out, to let his voice carry across the dunes, but the memory of the shadows returned to him, tall, silent, watching. If they were illusions, he risked nothing. But if they were real, perhaps they would hear him too. So he remained silent, following the trail with careful steps. As the sun began to fall, the prints grew fainter, swallowed by the moving sand. But even when they vanished, the traveler continued forward, guided by instinct and the faint pull of the shimmer. The desert's song that night. He did not sleep. He sat on the cold sand, eyes fixed on the stars. The wind rose and fell around him, carrying not words this time, but music, a low hum, deep and steady, like a choir of voices resonating through the earth itself. It was neither loud nor soft. It was infinite, surrounding him, filling every space inside his chest. The traveler closed his eyes, letting the sound carry him. For a moment, he was no longer on the desert floor. He was standing among the stars themselves, vast rivers of light flowing around him. Their glow touched his skin, warm and gentle, their hum vibrating through his bones. Jawed, he reached out his hand, and a star drifted close, resting in his palm like a glowing ember. Inside its light, he saw fragments of a memory, a city of towers shining beneath the night sky, its streets lit not by fire but by lanterns of starlight. He heard laughter, music, voices speaking a language he did not know yet. Somehow understood that it was beautiful, it was real, and then, as quickly as it came, it vanished. He opened his eyes. He was still in the desert, the stars still burning above, the cold pressing against him, but the hum lingered, faint, reminding him that what he had seen was not dream, nor illusion. It was a promise, The dunes that shift the morning rose like fire over the horizon, painting the dunes in shades of crimson and gold. The traveler stirred from a restless half-sleep, the desert's song still faint in his ears. When he looked around, his heart stilled. The land had changed. The dune he had climbed the night before no longer existed. Valleys had risen where there had been none. Ridges had collapsed into flat plains. The desert had moved in the night, reshaping itself as though it were alive. His fire pit was gone, buried under layers of shifting sand. His footprints from yesterday had vanished. Only the stars remained constant above. Watching Dot, the traveler inhaled deeply, steadying his breath. He had no choice but to move forward. Yet he realized now, with growing unease, he was not walking across the desert. He was walking through something that shifted and responded to him. The shimmer pulsed faintly in his chest, urging him onward. And so, he walked. The gathering of shadows by midday, the heat grew unbearable. Each step drained the last remnants of his strength. The water in his flask nearly gone. His lips were cracked, his throat raw. As he crested another dune, he stopped abruptly. They were there again. The shadows, dozens of them now, stretched tall across the sand. They stood in silence, faceless and thin, their forms darker than the noonday sun should allow. The traveler's heart hammered, sweat trickled down his temple. Though the heat was not the cause, the shadows did not move closer. They only turned their heads toward him, their bodies bending slightly, as though acknowledging his presence. He gripped the dagger at his side, though his hand trembled. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice rasping. The desert wind rose, carrying fragments of sound. "Seekers, the forgotten, we were once as you are." The traveler staggered back, the words shattering his breath. These shadows were not demons, they were echoes, wanderers who had come before, swallowed by the desert, stripped of flesh but bound eternally to its sands. And now they watched him, their silence heavy with warning. The faint light ahead, shadows melted away as the sun lowered, leaving the traveler trembling and alone once more. By dusk, when the desert cooled, he saw it again, the shimmer, this time brighter, clearer. It was not the cruel mirage of water, nor a trick of heat. It pulsed steadily, silver against the horizon, unwavering. His chest tightened with relief and dread alike. Every step brought him closer, yet with each step, the voices in the wind grew louder. Closer. The veil thins. Remember who you were. He clenched his fists, forcing his weary legs forward. The desert was no longer just a place. It was a threshold, a test. And if he faltered now, he would join the shadows, forever. The desert's promise that night. He did not build a fire. He did not sleep. Instead, he stood at the crest of a dune, gazing at the glow that now hovered steadily in the distance. His heart beat with a rhythm not his own, as though the desert itself had claimed it. The stars above shifted faintly, aligning into new constellations that pointed the way forward. The traveler raised his hand, whispering to the vast silence around him, "If I must give myself to your sands, then let me reach the light first." The desert gave no answer, but the shimmer grew stronger, its glow spilling faintly across the dunes. And for the first time, he felt certainty. This journey was not his alone. The desert had been waiting. The stars had been watching. The shadows had been guiding whatever lay ahead. He was already a part of it. The traveler took his first step down the dune, into the waiting dark. The shifting veiled desert by night was a place of endless contradictions. Cold winds swept the dunes, biting against the traveler's skin, while above, the stars burned with a brilliance that seemed almost alive. He had walked all day, his feet raw inside his boots, and yet when the shimmer appeared again on the horizon, he forgot his pain. It did not look like fire, nor moonlight. It pulsed like breath, steady and patient, waiting for him. He stopped on the crest of a dune, gazing at it in awe. And then, suddenly, the desert moved. The sand beneath his feet shifted, not like ordinary dunes shifting in the wind, but as though something vast turned in its sleep below. He fell to one knee, pressing his hands into the grit, his heart hammering. The whispers came again, but this time they were sharper, cutting through his thoughts like blades. "Step carefully. You walk between worlds. The veil is thin tonight." He stumbled to his feet, cloak whipping in the wind. The stars above blurred for a moment, their light bending strangely. It was as though the sky itself leaned closer, gazing directly at him. Then the dune ahead split. not wide, not violent, but with a slow, deliberate parting. Sand slid down in hushed cascades, revealing a narrow passage between two steep ridges. The air that drifted from it was cool, tinged with a scent he could not place, not of dust, but of stone, long hidden. The traveler froze. This was no ordinary desert path. This was an opening, carved by something greater than wind or time, and it was waiting for him. The passage of restlessness, guided only by the starlight above, the traveler stepped cautiously into the narrow passage. The sand walls rose high on either side, blocking the horizon, trapping him in a corridor of shifting earth. At first, silence, then voices, not from behind, not from ahead, but from within the very walls themselves. Once we were flesh. Once we too sought the light. But the sands kept us. He pressed his hand against the dune wall. For a moment, it was not sand he felt, but skin, warm, alive, trembling faintly like a heartbeat. He pulled back quickly, chest heaving, the weight of unseen eyes bearing down upon him. The corridor twisted, leading deeper, until he reached a space wider than the dunes above. Here, the starlight streamed down through a crack, illuminating what lay within. Figures carved into the walls, dozens of them, etched in long, sweeping lines, men and women raising their hands toward the sky, their eyes hollow, their mouths open as if in prayer or in warning, their bodies stretched unnaturally, limbs too long, torsos bending into impossible curves. The traveler's skin crawled. These were not carvings made by human hands. They were impressions, memories pressed into the sand itself, and all of them were reaching for something. He turned, following the direction of their hands. There, far down the corridor, faint light pulsed. The shimmer again, closer than ever. The echo of footsteps. He began to walk, his every step crunching softly in the sand. The passage grew narrower, shadows stretching long and thin, and the voices in the walls grew louder. Do not trust the light. The stars give, and the stars take away. Remember who you are. The traveler bit down on his lip. He wanted to answer them, to cry out, but I don't remember. Yet his throat was too dry. His voice trapped within him. Then he heard it. Footsteps, not his own. Somewhere ahead, faint but steady, a rhythm in the sand. His heart pounded. He was not alone here. Whoever left the footprints he had followed, they were still walking. He quickened his pace, the sound of his steps mingling with the phantom echoes. The corridor twisted sharply, and when he turned, he saw it, a figure. Tall, cloaked, its back to him, walking steadily toward the light. Its stride was slow but purposeful, unhurried, as though it belonged here. The traveler froze. Every instinct screamed to call out, yet something in the air silenced him. The shadows on the wall bent toward the figure, as if in reverence. When the traveler blinked, the figure was gone. No footprints, no trail. Only the shimmer remained. Pulsing faintly at the corridor's end, the edge of revelation, he stood at the threshold. The passage opened into a circular hollow, the walls curving high above like a bowl carved from sand. In the center lay a pool no wider than his arm stretched across. Its surface glowed faintly, not with fire, not with moonlight, but with starlight itself. The traveler's breath caught in his throat. It was not a mirage. It was not illusion. The pool reflected the stars above, but not as he saw them in the sky. Here, they moved, shifting slowly, arranging into constellations he had never known. He fell to his knees at its edge, trembling. The glow touched his skin, warm and gentle, filling him with something he had not felt in years, peace. And yet, beneath that peace was fear. For as he gazed deeper, he saw not only the stars, he saw faces, his own, at different ages. His mother, her hands flour-dusted as she baked. A friend, laughing by a riverbank. A stranger, eyes filled with grief. The water did not only reflect the sky, it reflected memory itself. His hand shook as he reached toward it. The surface rippled, and for a moment, his reflection was not his own. It was the shadow. Tall, faceless, watching. The traveler yanked his hand back, stumbling. The pool stilled, showing only stars again. He clutched his chest, gasping. He had found the shimmer. He had touched its light. But the desert was not only giving him answers, it was testing him. And the test had only just begun. The water that remembered the pool glowed softly in the hollow, its surface rippling though no wind touched it. The traveler crouched again, hesitant, torn between awe and dread. He whispered, as if afraid his voice might disturb the fragile silence, "What are you?" The water did not answer in words. Instead, images stirred within it, forming and dissolving as quickly as breath thought at first. Simple things, a child's toy carved from wood, a loaf of bread steaming in an oven, a hand brushing through tall grass. Everyday moments, fragile as glass. Then faces. So many faces. Some he knew, some he didn't. Some smiled, some wept, some were twisted in fear. They shimmered like stars, blinking in and out of existence. The traveler's chest tightened. He reached his hand forward again, slower this time, letting his fingertips graze the surface. The water was cold, colder than it should have been in this burning desert. And when he touched it, he was no longer kneeling by the pool. The forgotten feast. He stood in a vast hall lit by lanterns of silver flame. Dozens of people gathered at long tables carved of stone, feasting on fruits that glowed faintly from within, drinking from cups filled with liquid light. Their laughter rang through the air, soft and melodic. Music drifted from unseen instruments, the notes carrying a soothing rhythm that seemed to settle into his very bones. The traveler staggered, confused. His hands still trembled as though he had touched the pool only a moment ago. Yet here, they were steady, his body whole and strong. A woman with dark eyes and a gentle smile turned toward him, raising her cup. "Welcome, seeker," she said, her voice smooth as wind over sand. "You've walked far. Sit, eat, rest." His throat tightened. For a moment, he wanted to obey, to sit at the table, to taste the glowing fruit and drink the silver liquid. But even as the thought formed, unease prickled in his chest. The shadows along the walls stirred. He blinked, and in that instant, he saw their faces change. The smiles stretched to wide, the eyes hollowed black, the laughter twisting into something jagged and wrong. The woman leaned closer, her voice still kind, but her mouth too sharp when she whispered, "Stay, and you will never be thirsty again." The traveler stumbled back, shaking his head. He shut his eyes, willing himself away, forcing the vision to break. The pool's trial. When he opened them again, he was kneeling at the pool, breath ragged, sweat dripping from his brow. The water rippled violently, its surface flashing, with fragments of the feast hall before calming again. He collapsed onto the sand, clutching his chest. His heart thundered as though it had run miles. "Illusion," he muttered, voice cracking, "or memory, or temptation." The whispers came soft and scattered. "We stayed, we drank, we became the shadows." His stomach twisted. He stared at the pool again, realizing its purpose. This was no simple oasis. It was a trial, a test of desire. Those who surrendered became part of the desert, their memories bound into the water forever. He wiped his mouth, forcing himself to breathe steadily. His throat was dry, his skin cracked, his body cried out for water. But he did not drink. Instead, he whispered, half to himself, half to the desert, "I came for truth, not comfort." The pool shimmered once, its light softening, as though acknowledging his choice. The strangers, Markazi prepared to rise. His eyes caught something etched into the sand near the water's edge. At first he thought it was a natural pattern, but when he leaned closer, his breath caught a footprint, not his own, deeper, wider, left by the same stranger, whose trail he had followed. But this one was different. Around it, faint lines glowed, symbols etched by the pool's light itself. The traveler reached out, running his fingers over the impression. The glow sank into his skin, burning faintly like a brand. And then he heard it. "He walks ahead of you. He chose differently. The path waits for both of you." The traveler froze. Whoever this stranger was, they had stood here, they had touched the water, they had been offered the same temptation, but had they resisted, or had they drunk and become something else? His stomach tightened. He realized with a chill that he might not be chasing a companion at all. He might be chasing a shadow. The path forward, the pool stilled, its glow fading, until it was no brighter than the stars above. The test was done. The traveler rose unsteadily, legs weak but heart steady. He tightened his cloak and turned from the water as he stepped back into the corridor of sand. The voices followed him one last time, softer than before, almost like a lullaby. "Walk carefully, seeker. The desert does not forget, and neither will you." The passage stretched forward, narrow and dark, but at its far end, faint light beckoned. Not the glow of the pool this time, but something new. A silver lantern flame, swaying softly as though carried by an unseen hand. The traveler exhaled, steadying himself. Whatever awaited him now, he knew one thing. The desert was not only a place of thirst and silence, it was alive, and it had chosen him. The lantern that waited the passage ahead glowed faintly, the silver light swaying as if carried by an unseen hand. The traveler narrowed his eyes, his heart raced. But the desert's strange rhythm steadied his steps. He followed. The sand under his boots softened, strangely cool. The lantern moved slowly, just beyond his reach. It did not flee, nor did it approach. It guided Dot as he walked. The walls of the passage shifted. The carved faces he had seen before seemed to bend toward him, their hollow eyes catching the lantern glow. Some wept, some smiled, some raised their hands as if begging to be remembered. The traveler's chest tightened. He reached his hand toward one face, fingertips brushing the rough sand. It crumbled instantly, scattering into dust that vanished in the air. When he lowered his hand, the lantern had stopped. It hung in the air, suspended, as though waiting for him to choose. The door beneath the dune, the lantern lowered, its glow touching the ground. The sand shifted, parting slowly like water. A doorway appeared, not carved, not built, but formed from the desert itself. Its arch was lined with faint etchings, spirals, stars, and flowing lines that seemed to pulse faintly with silver light. The traveler's throat tightened. He stepped closer, the air cooling around him. The door did not open outward nor inward, it opened downward. Beneath the dune lay stairs, leading deep into the earth. The lantern drifted into the opening, casting its glow along the walls. The traveler hesitated, but only for a moment. The desert had guided him this far. If this was the path, he could not turn back now. He descended. The hall of forgotten names, the stairs spiraled down into a vast chamber carved entirely of stone. For the first time since his journey began, the ground beneath his feet was not shifting, sand but cool, solid rock. The lantern hovered high, illuminating the chamber. On every wall, words were etched, thousands of them, some sharp and clear, others worn away by time. Names. The traveler approached, running his hand over the nearest wall. He could not read the script, yet he knew what they were. The desert whispered it to him. The ones who came before, the ones who walked, who sought, who stayed. His stomach turned. These were the names of seekers who had entered the desert, drawn to the shimmer. Those who passed, those who failed, those who never returned. The chamber was a grave, a memory keeper, and yet, as he traced the letters, something strange happened. One of the names shifted under his touch, the lines rearranged, curving into letters he recognized. It spelled his own name. The traveler's breath caught. His hand trembled against the wall. The desert already knew him. It had written him here before he ever arrived. He stumbled back, his chest heaving. The chamber pressed close, its silence suffocating. He wanted to run, but the lantern drifted forward, deeper into the hall, urging him on. The mirror of dust at the far end of the hall stood a tall slab of stone, polished until it gleamed like glass. The lantern floated before it, its light stretching across the smooth surface. That the traveler stepped closer. His reflection stared back, but it was not right. This reflection was older, its face hollow, its eyes sunken, its cloak tattered. The man in the stone looked like a shadow of himself, worn away by time and grief. The traveler's chest ached. He reached out, placing his palm against the stone. The reflection moved too, but not the same. It raised its other hand, placing it over his. Then its lips moved, whispering words he could not hear. The surface shivered, ripples spreading across the stone like water, and suddenly, he saw more. Dozens of reflections, hundreds, each one a version of himself, younger, older, weary, hopeful, lost. 1,000 lives, 1,000 choices. Each one walked the desert, each one searching for the shimmer. The weight of it crushed him. He staggered, pulling his hand away. The reflections dissolved, leaving only his current face behind, pale and shaken. The lantern drifted upward, its glow steady. The whispers filled the chamber. You are not the first. You are not the last. But you are chosen still. The choice of the door. As the voices faded, another doorway opened in the stone wall, a narrow arch glowing faintly with silver light. The traveler steadied himself. His legs trembled, his throat burned with thirst, but his heart beat with quiet certainty. He had seen the pool, he had resisted the feast, he had faced the hall of names and the mirror of himself. And still, the path continued. The lantern floated through the door, its light pulling him onward. The traveler followed. The chamber behind him darkened. the names fading into silence, only the stars above remained, etched faintly into the stone. Watching as he stepped deeper into the desert's memory, the narrow descent, the new doorway opened into a tunnel, its walls smoother than sand, as though carved by careful hands. The lantern drifted ahead, lighting the way with a steady silver glow. The traveler stepped cautiously, each footfall echoing softly. The silence here was heavier, pressing against his ears like water. He touched the wall. It was cold, almost wet, though no moisture clung to his fingers. The stone pulsed faintly under his palm, like the slow rhythm of a heart. He shivered, drawing his cloak tighter. The deeper he went, the more he felt it. A pull, not of gravity, but of memory. As though the walls themselves wanted to draw his thoughts from him. The chamber of stars, the tunnel widened abruptly, opening into a cavern vast enough to hold the night sky itself. The ceiling arched high above, its surface glittering with thousands of points of light. Not paint, not crystals, but stars. Tiny orbs of glowing silver embedded in the stone, pulsing softly. The traveler gasped. It was as though he stood beneath the heavens, yet deeper than the earth. The lantern floated higher, merging its glow with the stars above, and then faint lines of light stretched between the orbs, forming constellations, not the ones he knew. New shapes, strange beasts, unfamiliar symbols, towering figures with staffs and crowns. The constellations twisted and shifted as he watched, alive, breathing, weaving together a story written in starlight. He sank to his knees, overwhelmed. The cavern sang in silence, a vibration thrumming through his bones. Thought, and the stars whispered, "We are the desert's memory. We are the sky beneath the sand. What is above is below." The stranger revealed as the whispers faded, movement stirred at the far end of the chamber. The traveler's breath caught. A figure stood there, cloaked, its form dark against the silver glow. The same silhouette he had seen before. This time, it did not vanish. The lantern drifted slowly toward the figure, as though recognizing it. The cloaked shape lifted its head, and though its face remained hidden, the air shifted with its presence. The traveler took a step forward, his throat tightened, words trembling on his lips. "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head. Then, in a voice low and soft as wind across sand, it answered, "I am what you will become." The traveler froze, his pulse thundered. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "I am me. I am not." The figure stepped closer, its movement slow, deliberate. The lantern hovered between them, its light flickering as if uncertain. "Every seeker finds the shimmer," the figure murmured. "But not all resist. Those who drink, those who stay, those who forget, they become shadows. Those who endure become echoes. And those who survive." The figure raised its hand, pointing directly at him. "Become me." The trial of reflection. The traveler staggered back, heart hammering. The cavern pulsed with light. The stars above blurred, then reformed into a single constellation. A lone figure walking endlessly across the desert, its steps eternal, its face empty. The cloaked figure reached for him, hand pale beneath the sleeve. "The desert does not end," it said. "It continues through you. Walk forever, or become still. These are the only paths." The traveler's knees weakened. The weight of the choice pressed against him. His lips cracked as he whispered, "But I came for truth. Not for endless walking, not for forgetting. Truth." The cavern grew silent. The figure stilled. Then slowly it lowered its hand. "Then seek it," it said, voice almost tender. "But truth has a price, and the desert always collects." The lantern's glow surged, brighter than before. The figure dissolved into its light, vanishing like mist. The final step. The traveler stood alone again, trembling. His breath echoed in the cavern, his heart beat loud in his ears. The stars above pulsed gently, as though approving. A new doorway opened on the far side of the chamber, carved in silver light. Beyond it, faint winds stirred, carrying with them not heat, not dryness, but the faint scent of water. The traveler swallowed hard. He adjusted his cloak, tightened the straps of his flask, though it was nearly empty, and placed one foot forward. He did not know what awaited him beyond this chamber. Only that the desert had spoken, and it had chosen him to walk deeper still. The lantern hovered by his side, faithful, silent, and together they stepped into the next passage, leaving the cavern of stars behind. The return to the surface. The silver doorway guided the traveler upward. Each step echoed against smooth stone walls, the lantern floating patiently ahead of him, The air grew warmer as he climbed, the cool weight of the cavern fading behind him. At last, he emerged. The desert stretched endlessly, dunes glowing gold beneath the first rays of dawn. The horizon shimmered with heat, though the sun had only just begun to rise. The stars that had lit his path below were gone, hidden by daylight, yet he still felt their silent gaze upon him. He inhaled deeply, the dry air searing his lungs. The chamber of stars had been a place of memory and prophecy. But here on the surface, reality returned in all its merciless brightness. The desert was not done with him. It was only beginning. The weight of the sun as the morning grew, the heat pressed harder. By midday, it was suffocating. The traveler shielded his face beneath his hood, but the sun pierced through, burning his skin, cracking his lips. His flask was nearly empty. He measured each sip with care, letting only drops touch his tongue. Still, the thirst clawed at him, a gnawing ache that worsened with every step. The sand shifted beneath his boots, sliding away, forcing him to labor for each stride. The dunes rose like mountains, their peaks blinding white in the sunlight. He climbed one after another, each one stealing more of his strength. The desert showed no mercy. And yet, as sweat dripped into his eyes, he began to notice something strange. The horizon blurred not with mirages of water, but with faint shapes. Towers of glass, walls of stone, cities long vanished. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and the visions melted away. Only dunes remained. The desert was toying with him, the companions of illusion. By afternoon, exhaustion dragged him to his knees. He fell into the sand, breathing hard, his vision swimming. The lantern hovered patiently nearby, its glow dim in the fierce sunlight, but constant. When he lifted his head, he was not alone. Figures surrounded him, men and women in flowing robes, travelers like himself, their faces kind, their eyes shining with welcome. One bent to offer him a flask of water, the liquid glistening clear and cold. The traveler's throat ached, his hands trembled. He reached, stopped. Their shadows were wrong. The figures stood tall, but their shadows stretched not behind them, but toward him, bending unnaturally across the sand. His chest tightened. He closed his eyes, forcing breath through parched lips. When he opened them again, the figures were gone. Only sand stretched around him, empty as before. The lantern pulsed faintly, as if in quiet approval. The traveler smiled weakly, whispering hoarsely, "Not yet, you won't have me yet." He pushed himself up, legs unsteady, and continued forward. The first night, fire by dusk, the desert's cruelty softened. The sun sank, the heat bled away, and the sky blazed with orange and violet. The traveler found a hollow between dunes and rested there, too weary to build a fire. But the desert built one for him. A spark flickered in the sand, faint at first, then growing into a flame of pale silver. It burned without wood, without fuel, rising from the grains themselves. The lantern drifted lower, settling beside it, as if the flame were kin. The traveler watched in silence, fear mingling with wonder. The fire did not crackle or consume. It whispered, "Rest, seeker. We will keep the night for you." He lay back, staring at the stars above. They stretched in endless rivers of light, clearer here than he had ever seen. Slowly, his breathing steadied, his body loosening into the desert's cradle. Before sleep claimed him, he whispered, "I will keep walking. I will find the shimmer. I will remember." The silver flame pulsed once, as though in answer, and the desert sang him into sleep. The dreams of the fire. The traveler drifted into sleep, the silver fire glowing softly at his side. Its light did not flicker like an ordinary flame. It breathed, expanding and contracting as though alive. In his dreams, the desert transformed. The dunes became rivers of light, flowing endlessly under a sky filled with constellations he had never seen. Figures moved along those rivers, cloaked wanderers like himself, each carrying a lantern of silver flame. They walked in silence, their faces hidden, but their steps were steady, purposeful. When they reached the edge of the dream's horizon, they did not vanish. They became stars. The traveler tried to follow, but his feet sank deep into the glowing sand. No matter how hard he moved, he could not lift himself free. Then one of the cloaked figures turned. Unlike the others, it revealed its face. It was his, older, weary, eyes shadowed with sorrow. The dream figure lifted its lantern high and whispered, "Walk, even when you are lost. The desert remembers your steps." The dream shattered like glass, and he woke. The dawn against the silver fire had faded, leaving only cool ash scattered across the sand. The lantern hovered low, its light dim against the early dawn. The traveler pushed himself upright, groaning softly. His muscles ached, his lips cracked, and his flask was nearly empty. Yet his heart felt steadier than before. The dream lingered, its words echoing in his mind. The desert remembers your steps. He rose and began to walk again. The morning sun climbed quickly, the dunes shimmering with fresh light. Wind stirred fine streams of sand across the surface, erasing his footprints behind him. Yet he carried the dream's voice within him, certain that nothing was truly lost here. Every step was remembered, even if he could not see it. The mirage of the caravan by midday, heat bore down with merciless weight. The traveler's vision wavered, sweat stinging his eyes. The lantern floated faithfully beside him, but its glow was pale in the brutal sun. Then, across the horizon, he saw movement, a caravan, dozens of camels laden with goods, their riders cloaked in flowing garments, colorful banners flapping above them. He blinked against the light, unsure if it was mirage or reality. The figures waved as they drew closer. Their voices carried faintly across the sand. Laughter, greetings, the ring of bells on camel harnesses. The traveler's heart leaped, relief surged through him. Companionship, water, perhaps even escape. He stumbled toward them, raising his arm. Wait, but as he drew closer, the details wavered, the riders' faces blurred, their banners dissolved, their voices grew hollow, and then, one by one, they melted into the air. The caravan vanished. The traveler collapsed to his knees, fists sinking into hot sand. Despair clenched his chest. He had walked toward nothing. The lantern pulsed softly, a gentle reminder. Illusion or not, the desert was teaching him temptation, desire, the ache of what was never his. With trembling arms, he forced himself upright once more. He whispered through cracked lips, not water, not escape, only truth. The horizon shimmered, silently in answer. The circle of stones by late afternoon. As the sun sank lower, he stumbled upon something unexpected. A circle of standing stones rising from the sand. Each was tall as a man, worn smooth by ages of wind. The lantern glowed brighter as it approached, drifting toward the circle's center. The traveler followed, stepping cautiously. The air inside was cooler, the sand firmer, as though the stones held the heat at bay. Strange markings covered their surfaces, spirals, stars, flowing lines like those he had seen in the chamber below. He placed his hand on one. A vibration hummed beneath his palm, and then the circle spoke, not in words, but in visions. He saw men and women gathered here long ago, cloaked figures standing where he now stood, raising their lanterns high. They chanted in a language lost to him, their voices woven into the wind. And above them, the stars blazed brighter, bending low as though to listen. The vision faded, leaving only silence. The traveler sank to his knees in the circle, overwhelmed. This was no random place. It was a gathering ground, a memory, a reminder that he was not the first to walk here. The desert had always been walked, and it would always remember. The night approaches as evening fell. The traveler remained in the circle, watching the sky shift from gold to violet to deep indigo. The lantern floated beside him, its glow strengthening as darkness returned. He felt the presence of those before him, the unseen wanderers, the forgotten seekers, the endless footsteps buried in sand. Lifting his gaze to the stars, he whispered, "I will walk, I will not stop, I will carry the desert in me." The lantern pulsed warmly, as though sealing a vow. The night wind rose, soft and cool. For the first time since leaving the chamber, the traveler smiled faintly. He had faced illusions, despair, and temptation. Yet he still walked. And the desert, in its strange and merciless way, had given him its blessing. The stars as compassed the night deepened, and the desert revealed its gentler face. The heat bled away, replaced by cool winds that carried the faint scent of dry sage. Above, the sky glittered with uncountable stars, sharp and clear, as though each one had been freshly lit. The traveler sat within the stone circle, watching the constellations shift. He did not know their names, yet he felt their stories pressing against him. Shapes bent into patterns that were more than coincidence, hunters chasing beasts, rivers of light flowing across blackness, great eyes that watched eternally. He noticed one star brighter than the rest, pulsing faintly in rhythm with his lantern. It seemed to lean lower, closer, almost pointing. He rose, adjusting his cloak. The desert had guided him this far. Now the stars themselves offered direction. He would follow. The walk of silence, he walked through the night, guided by that pulsing star. The sand crunched softly under his boots, the dunes rising and falling like frozen waves. The lantern floated by his shoulder, its glow harmonizing with the star above. The silence was vast, deeper than any he had known. No rustle of leaves, no call of birds, no murmur of rivers, only the whisper of sand shifting in the breeze. And yet, within that silence, he heard the faintest song. It was not from the lantern, nor from the wind. It came from the ground itself, a low vibration, like the hum of distant voices speaking together in unison. He paused, kneeling to press his ear to the sand. The hum grew clearer. Words were not distinct, but the rhythm was steady, echoing like a heartbeat. The desert was not empty, it was singing. The bone dune hours passed, the moon climbing high. At last, he reached a dune unlike any other. Its surface gleamed pale white, glowing faintly in the moonlight. As he climbed, his boots slipped. The sand here was heavier, rougher. He bent down, scooping a handful. His breath caught. These were not grains of sand, they were fragments of bone. The dune stretched high above, built entirely from the remains of countless creatures, bleached white and broken by time. Skulls peered out from its slopes, hollow eyes fixed eternally on the stars. The traveler's chest tightened, each step upward echoed with brittle cracks, bones breaking beneath his weight. At the summit, the lantern hovered higher, casting light across the dune. The horizon glowed faintly, as though fire burned in the distance. The traveler sank to his knees, overwhelmed. He whispered hoarsely, "How many walked here before me? How many never returned?" The dune answered only with silence, but the lantern pulsed once, steady, reminding him he was still alive. He still walked, the vision of the fallen as he sat on the bone dune, fatigue pulling at his body. His eyes grew heavy, sleep crept close, and the desert gave him another vision. He saw them, thousands of travelers walking across the sands, each carrying lanterns of silver fire. But one by one, they stumbled. Some felt the thirst, some to storms, some to illusions that devoured them whole. Their bodies dissolved into sand, their bones joining the dune upon which he now sat. Their lanterns dimmed, their flames scattering into the sky to become stars. Yet, still, others walked. Endless figures, endless steps. The vision blurred, and he saw himself among them. Not oneself, but many. Infinite versions of him, stretched across time. Some succeeded, some failed, but all walked the same path. He gasped awake, chest heaving. The vision dissolved, leaving only the bone dune and the night. The lantern hovered close, steady and unwavering. The signal of fire. When he raised his head, he noticed it again, the faint glow on the horizon. It was not the mirage of water, not the shimmer of illusion. This was fire, real fire, burning in the distance. The traveler's heart quickened. Could it be another seeker's camp, a caravan? Or was it another trial, waiting to lure him closer? He stood, brushing bone dust from his hands. His throat burned, his legs ached, but his spirit stirred. Whatever it was, he had to see. He began the descent from the bone dune, every step brittle and sharp. The lantern floated ahead, its light guiding the way, while the star above pulsed brighter, as though urging him onward. The desert's silence thickened, but his resolve grew with each stride. The fire waited, and with it, perhaps, the next truth. The approach to the fire. The traveler moved through the night, his body swaying with exhaustion, yet his mind sharpened by the distant glow. Each dune he crossed revealed the fire a little clearer, not a wild blaze, but a steady, deliberate flame, as though tended carefully by unseen hands. The lantern floated close, its light mingling with the fire's glow on the horizon. The star above, his silent guide, pulsed brighter, urging him onward. At last, after hours of trudging, he crested a dune and saw it clearly. In the hollow below burned a circle of flames, tall and silver, their tongues dancing without fuel. Around them stood stone pillars, each carved with the same spirals and constellations he had seen before. The fire was no camp, it was a shrine. The keepers of the shrine. As he descended, he noticed movement around the flames. Figures cloaked in white stood silently, their faces hidden, their lanterns glowing faintly in their hands. The traveler's heart pounded. He had not seen another living soul since he entered the desert. Were these illusions, or guardians? He stepped carefully into the hollow. his lantern pulsing softly as if in recognition. The cloaked figures turned toward him in unison. No voices greeted him, no hands reached out. They simply stared, their lanterns glowing brighter. At last, one raised an arm and gestured toward the fire. The traveler swallowed, then stepped closer. The trail of flame, the silver fire, towered before him, heatless, yet radiating a strange pressure that pressed against his skin and chest. He extended a trembling hand toward it. The flame leaned closer, bending unnaturally, as though reaching back. When his fingers touched the light, a surge of vision struck him. He saw endless deserts, each stretching beyond sight. He saw seekers walking across time, their faces changing but their lanterns the same. He saw cities buried, temples drowned in sand, empires rising and falling like waves, and at the center of it all, a shimmer. Not fire, not water, not illusion, but something greater, the heart of the desert itself. The vision burned into him, searing his soul. His knees buckled, and he fell into the sand, gasping. When he looked up, the cloaked figures were gone. Only the fire remained, and his lantern pulsing steadily beside it. The mark of the desert. He rose slowly, his body trembling. His hand, the one that had touched the fire, now glowed faintly with silver light, as though marked. The flame bent once more, lowering toward him, then collapsed inward, vanishing into the sand. The shrine was gone, leaving only the circle of stones and the night sky above. The traveler staggered back, staring at his hand. The glow was soft, steady, impossible to ignore. The desert had claimed him, no longer merely a wanderer. He was marked a seeker, chosen by the fire itself. The path forward, the lantern floated higher, its glow stronger than before. The star above pulsed in perfect rhythm with it, guiding him still. The traveler drew a deep breath. His body ached, his throat was raw, yet something within him had shifted. The despair that once clung to him had loosened. He was not lost. He was not forgotten. The desert had shown him visions, illusions, and trials, and now it had branded him with its fire. He looked to the horizon, where the dunes stretched endlessly under the moonlight. "I will walk," he whispered. "I will walk until the desert gives me its truth." The lantern pulsed in answer. The star above shone brighter, and the traveler stepped forward once more, his shadow stretching long across the silver sand. The dawn after the fire, the traveler awoke to the pale light of dawn, his body stiff, his lips parched, but his spirit strangely steady. His hand, the one that had touched the silver fire, still glowed faintly, the light pulsing like a second heartbeat beneath his skin. He flexed his fingers, half expecting the glow to fade, but it remained. He was marked, chosen. The lantern hovered at his side, brighter than it had been since he first stepped into the desert. Its rhythm matched the faint glow of his hand, as though the two were now bound. The traveler rose, brushing sand from his cloak, and turned his eyes to the horizon. Dunes rose endlessly, yet something felt different. The air carried a faint current of life, subtle but distinct. For the first time in many days, he felt he was not walking toward emptiness. He was walking toward someone. The nomads of the dunes. By mid-morning, shapes appeared on the horizon. At first, he feared another mirage. The desert had played this trick before, offering visions of caravans in cities that dissolved into sand. But as he drew closer, the shapes sharpened. Tents stood at the base of a dune, their cloth woven in patterns of blue and white, fluttering against the hot wind. Camels knelt nearby, laden with supplies, their long necks swaying lazily. People moved between the tents, real people. Their voices carried faintly, children's laughter, the ring of metal bowls, the low hum of conversation. The traveler's throat tightened. He had walked alone for so long he had forgotten what human presence felt like. Still, he hesitated. Would they welcome him, or see him as an intruder, a stranger marked by strange fire? He pressed forward, his lantern dimming slightly, as if cautious. The watcher. Before he could reach the tents, a figure appeared at the crest of the dune. A tall man, wrapped in layers of cloth, his face shaded by a veil. A curved blade hung at his side, but his posture was calm, steady. The man raised a hand in silent greeting. The traveler stopped, raising his own hand in return. For a long moment, they regarded one another in the desert silence. Then the man descended the dune with smooth, practiced steps, sand parting easily beneath his feet. When he reached the traveler, he spoke in a voice low and steady, carrying the weight of ages. "The desert does not give without taking," he said. "You carry its mark. The traveler's eyes widened. You see it. He lifted his glowing hand, the faint silver light pulsing. The man nodded once. I see it, and I see that you still walk. Few who bear it do. The invitation without further words, the man gestured for him to follow. They walked together toward the camp. The nomads paused to watch the travelers approach, their faces half hidden beneath scarves, their eyes sharp with curiosity, but not hostility. Children peeked from behind their mothers, wide-eyed at the stranger and his floating lantern. At the center of the camp stood a wide tent, its fabric dyed deep indigo, embroidered with stars and spirals. The man held the flap open, motioning the traveler inside. The air within was cooler, shaded by thick cloth. Cushions lay scattered on the sand, and incense burned faintly, carrying the scent of cedar and myrrh. An elder woman sat within, her hair silver, her face lined with years, but her eyes bright as the desert moon. She wore a necklace of stones, etched with spiral symbols. The man bowed his head. Mother of Sands, the desert has brought us another seeker. The elder studied the traveler silently, her gaze falling on his hand. The silver glow reflected in her eyes. Yes, she murmured, the desert has marked him. He has touched the fire. The wisdom of the Mother of Sands. The traveler knelt before her, bowing his head. I do not understand, he confessed. The fire, the visions, the endless walking. Why was I chosen? What does the desert want from me? The elder leaned forward, her voice soft but resonant. The desert wants nothing. It is not a master, but a mirror. It does not choose, it shows. What you saw in the fire was not its truth, but your own. What you carry is not its mark, but the reflection of your spirit. The traveler's breath caught. But if that is so, then why does it feel so heavy? Why does it burn in me? Her eyes softened. Because truth is heavy. Because you have carried lies too long, and they must be burned away. She reached out, placing her wrinkled hand over his, glowing one. The light dimmed slightly, steadying, as if soothed. Do not fear the weight, she whispered. Walk with it. Let it guide you, not bind you. The traveler felt tears prick his eyes, the first in many days. He bowed his head deeper. Then, I will walk, he said softly, until the desert gives me its last secret. The elder smiled faintly, as though she had heard those words many times before. Then you are one of us, she said. The night among nomads. The traveler remained within the elder's tent until the sun dipped low. Outside, voices rose and fell with the rhythm of preparation, camels being settled, fires kindled, and children called indoors. When he stepped out, the desert sky had shifted into velvet twilight. Stars spilled across the heavens, countless and bright, as though the dunes themselves had poured them upward. The nomads gathered in a wide circle beyond the tents, their fires burning low, their shadows long against the sand. The man who had first greeted him, the watcher of the dunes, motioned for him to join. He obeyed, taking his place among them, the lantern hovering by his side. No one questioned its presence. Among these people, the lantern was not a curiosity but a recognition. They had seen such things before. The ritual of flame. At the center of the circle stood a shallow pit filled not with wood, but with fine silver dust. One of the nomads sprinkled a handful of stones over it, murmuring in a language the traveler could not understand. The dust ignited without spark or tinder, rising into pale fire. Its light was calm, almost liquid, washing gently over the circle. The elder woman lifted her hands and began to chant. The others joined her, their voices weaving together into a deep, resonant hum. The sound vibrated through the sand, into the traveler's chest, until it felt as though the desert itself was singing. The traveler closed his eyes. For a moment, he was back at the shrine of flame, his hand pressed into silver light, his soul marked forever. When he opened them again, the nomads were watching him quietly, their eyes reflecting firelight. The elder nodded once, as though acknowledging that he now belonged to their circle. The stories of the sand after, the chants faded. The fires burned lower, and the nomads began to tell stories. Their voices softened, carrying like wind across the dunes. One spoke of the river beneath the sand, a hidden current that carried memories of all who had walked the desert. Another told of the stone serpent, a creature that slumbered under dunes until called by greed. A woman sang of the sky well, where stars bent down to drink from the earth. The traveler listened, his breath slow, his body loosening. The stories were not entertainment but living truths, woven into the desert like threads into cloth. At last, the elder turned her gaze toward him. "And what story do you bring, seeker?" she asked. The traveler hesitated. His voice cracked from thirst, yet he spoke. "I was lost in silence. I walked without knowing why, but the desert showed me fire, and it marked me. It burned away my lies, though I still do not know what truth waits ahead." The circle was silent. Then the elder inclined her head. "You have spoken the beginning. The desert will give you the rest, the lesson of water later." When the stories ended, the watcher of the dunes brought him a small bowl of water. The traveler's hands trembled as he lifted it, his thirst aching, but the man stopped him with a raised hand. "Not all water is for drinking." He dipped his own fingers into the bowl and let the droplets fall onto the sand. Instantly, the grains shimmered, releasing a faint glow before fading. "The desert holds memory," he explained. "When we return water to it, we honor what came before us. Drink only after the desert has taken its share." The traveler nodded slowly, touched his fingers to the water, and let it fall. Then, reverently, he drank the rest. It was cool, sweeter than anything he remembered. It filled not just his body but his spirit, as though the act of honoring the desert had transformed it. He whispered softly, "Thank you." The man only smiled beneath his veil. "Thank the desert." The sleepless silence when the circle broke apart. The traveler lay within one of the tents offered to him. The lantern hovered nearby, its glow soft, steady, but he could not sleep. The voices of the nomads' chants, the glow of the flame, the elder's words, all echoed within him. He rose and stepped outside. The night was vast, the camp silent, except for the soft snoring of camels and the crackle of fading fires. He walked a little way beyond the tents, standing at the edge of the dunes. Stars blazed above him, the same ones that had guided him since he began. He raised his glowing hand, holding it against the sky, the silver mark shining faintly in rhythm with the constellations. For a long time, he simply stood there, listening to the silence, not emptiness, but presence. And for the first time, he felt the desert was not trying to test him. It was trying to teach him. The elders' summons near dawn. When the stars began to soften into pale light, a gentle hand shook the traveler awake. It was the watcher of the dunes. His eyes, dark beneath the folds of his veil, carried no urgency, only calm. "The mother of sands calls you," he murmured. The traveler rose, gathering his cloak. The lantern followed, pulsing faintly. He was led back into the great indigo tent, where the elder waited. She sat cross-legged before a shallow bowl of glowing sand, her palms hovering just above it. The grains shifted as though stirred by invisible wind, forming and dissolving into shapes. She lifted her gaze as he entered. "You walk with the desert's fire now, but fire alone cannot guide you. Sit, seeker, listen." He obeyed, lowering himself onto the cushions before her. "The sand's prophecy." The elder traced her fingers lightly through the glowing sand. As she moved, patterns appeared, spirals, stars, and lines stretching outward like paths. "The desert is not empty," she said softly. "It remembers. Every step taken, every word spoken, every breath given to its winds remains here, woven into its silence. That is why illusions walk before you. That is why fire burns without fuel. What you see is memory." The traveler leaned closer, watching the grains shift into shapes. He saw figures, cloaked wanderers like himself, carrying lanterns. Some walked alone, others in caravans. Many disappeared into the dunes, their flames extinguished. But some, the elder continued, reached the place where the sands end, the valley of dreams. There, the desert gives its final gift. The traveler's heart beat faster. "Is that where my path leads?" Her eyes met his. "All paths lead there, but not all who walk will arrive." The trial of choice. The elder lifted a handful of sand and let it fall slowly through her fingers. "You will face 3 trials. 1, you have already met illusion. The desert will show you what you most desire, and you must walk past it." He nodded, remembering the mirage of the caravan, the hollow laughter that dissolved into nothing. "The 2nd trial is shadow," she said, her voice lowering. "When storms rise and fear binds your heart, you must not turn inward. If you do, the desert will swallow you." "And the 3rd, the traveler whispered. She studied him for a long moment. Then her voice softened, almost mournful. "The trial of memory. The desert will give back what you have forgotten. Joy and sorrow, love and regret. Many fall there, because the past is heavier than thirst." Her words sank deep into him, heavier than the sand itself. The gift of the nomads, the elder motioned to the watcher. He stepped forward, carrying a small pouch. When opened, it revealed a fine powder of silver, like crushed starlight. This is the dust of return, the elder explained. When you scatter it, the desert will remember your place. If storms drive you astray, if illusions blind you, it will bring you back. The traveler accepted the pouch with reverence, tucking it into his cloak, his voice cracked with gratitude. Why give this to me? I am only a stranger. The elder's gaze softened. No one is a stranger to the desert. All who walk it belong to it. We only remind you. The departure. When he left the tent, dawn had broken fully. The camp was alive with motion, camels loaded, tents folded, children laughing as they prepared to travel. The watcher of the dunes walked beside him as he reached the camp's edge. Will you not travel with me? The traveler asked. The man shook his head. Our path is our own. Yours leads deeper. But remember, the desert is not your enemy. It is your teacher. Listen, and you will endure. The traveler bowed his head in respect. The man returned the gesture, then turned away. Joining his people, the traveler stood alone once more, the dunes stretching before him in endless waves of gold. His lantern pulsed steadily at his side. His marked hand glowed faintly. The pouch of silver dust weighed gently against his cloak. He drew a deep breath and stepped forward. The winds whispered as he climbed the first dune. Wind rose around him, carrying faint whispers. At first they were scattered, meaningless. But as he paused, listening, he realized they carried fragments of words. Walk, remember, endure. The whispers were not from the nomads. They were from the desert itself. The traveler closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. Then he smiled faintly. I will listen, he whispered back. I will endure. The wind quieted, as if satisfied, and the traveler walked on, toward the heart of the endless sands. The first steps alone, the camp of the nomads faded behind him, swallowed quickly by the rolling dunes. Only faint echoes of their chants lingered in his ears, like threads of music carried by the wind. The traveler walked slowly at first, each step heavy, as though reluctant to let go of their presence. But soon the rhythm of his stride returned, steady and determined. His lantern floated close, glowing stronger now, as if nourished by the wisdom he carried from the elder. The faint silver mark on his hand pulsed in time with its light, a heartbeat that belonged as much to the desert as to himself. The silence felt less daunting than before. Where once it pressed against him like emptiness, now it held the memory of voices, stories, and songs. The desert was not barren. It was filled with echoes. The storm at the horizon as the sun climbed higher. The traveler paused at the crest of a dune. Far ahead, the horizon darkened. A wall of dust shimmered in the heat, rolling upward into the sky. A storm. The nomad's words returned to him. The second trial is shadow. When storms rise and fear binds your heart, you must not turn inward. His stomach tightened, but he did not turn back. He pressed onward, determined to face what awaited him. The wind grew harsher. Sand whipped against his cloak, stinging his skin. The lantern flickered, straining against the storm's breath. He reached into his cloak and touched the pouch of silver dust. It hummed faintly at his fingertips, as though waiting. The eye of the storm. By midday, the storm engulfed him. Darkness swallowed the sky, the sun vanishing behind a wall of red-gold haze. The wind roared like a living beast, tearing at his cloak, shoving him sideways across the dunes. He pulled the fabric tightly around his face, barely able to breathe. His boots sank into shifting sand, each step treacherous, the ground sliding beneath him. Fear clawed at him. Whispers rose in the storm, louder now, not the gentle voices of the wind, but mocking cries. You will fall. You will vanish. You are nothing. The traveler gritted his teeth. He remembered the elder's warning. Fear binds, and the desert devours the bound. He forced his hand into the pouch of silver dust and flung a handful into the storm. The grains shimmered, glowing faintly even in the chaos. Instantly, the ground beneath him steadied. The lantern brightened, pulsing with renewed strength. For a brief moment, the storm's voice faltered. Not nothing, he whispered hoarsely. I still walk. The shadow within. Yet the storm was not finished. As he staggered forward, shadows formed within the swirling dust. Figures walking beside him. He recognized them, versions of himself, each one broken, collapsed, their lanterns extinguished. They stumbled through the storm, falling again and again. One reached out, its eyes hollow. Join us. You will never reach the valley. For a moment, despair nearly swallowed him. What if the shadows spoke true? What if the desert was not a path but a prison with no end? His hand trembled. The lantern dimmed. Then he remembered the nomad's ritual, the gift of water to the sand, the way the desert responded when honored. He reached into his pouch once more, scattering another small handful of silver dust. The shadows recoiled, dissolving back into the storm. The lantern flared bright again, and his hand pulsed steady. He breathed deep, bracing himself against the gale. I will not bind myself to fear. I will walk. The passing of the storm hours stretched like days. His body screamed, his throat ached, and every muscle burned, but he did not stop. Step by step, he moved forward, guided by the lantern's glow and the faint pulse in his hand. At last, the storm thinned. The sky broke open, light spilling once more across the dunes. The wind softened, the dust falling away like curtains lifted from a stage. The traveler stumbled forward, collapsing to his knees. His body shook, but his spirit did not falter. He had endured. Above, the star that had guided him since the beginning blazed brighter than ever. The desert had not swallowed him, it had tested him, and he had passed. The lesson of shadow. As he lay there, catching his breath, he heard the storm's fading whispers transform into something softer, almost like words of approval. Fear is the shadow of truth. Walk through it, and you find the light. He closed his eyes, letting the words settle into him. Then he rose, brushing sand from his knees, his lantern floating close, as though proud of him. The dunes stretched ahead, endless as always, but he no longer saw them as obstacles. They were teachers, each carrying a lesson. He adjusted his cloak, tightened his grip on the pouch of silver dust, and took another step. The Valley of Dreams was still far, but he was closer now, not in distance, but in spirit. The desert had marked him, the fire had chosen him, the nomads had guided him, the storm had tested him. And still, he walked. The desert night when the sun finally sank behind the horizon. The desert shifted into a world of silver and shadow. The dunes glowed faintly beneath the moon, their curves soft and endless, as though the land itself had fallen into a dream. The traveler had walked all day, his body aching from the storm's trial. When night came, he sought refuge at the base of a dune, where the wind softened into whispers. There, with trembling hands, he gathered what dry brush he could find, brittle twigs, scraps of root, pieces of driftwood carried long ago by storms. He set them together, and the lantern hovered close, touching them with its glow. A fire sparked to life, small but steady, its flames curling upward into the night air. The traveler sighed and lowered himself beside it. His cloak wrapped tight, his silver-marked hand stretched toward the warmth. The fire was unlike the silver shrine he had touched before. This was mortal flame, fragile and fleeting. Yet it comforted him. Its crackle, a reminder that he was still alive. Above him, the stars brightened, countless and sharp. He wondered if they, too, were watching, as the nomads had said, if the desert itself listened to every word whispered in its silence. The whisper of stories. The fire's glow shifted strangely as he stared into it. At first it was only flickering flame. Then, slowly, images began to shimmer within it. Outlines of figures, shadows forming shapes. A voice rose softly, not from the fire, not from the wind, but from within his mind. It was neither male nor female, but timeless, a chorus of all voices that had ever walked the desert. Every seeker must listen, it whispered. Every flame tells a story. The traveler leaned closer, his breath shallow. The fire shimmered, and a scene unfolded. The myth of the twin moons. In the flames, he saw the desert under not one moon, but two. Twin orbs glowed above, one silver, one gold, casting twin shadows across the dunes. People walked beneath them, carrying lanterns of crystal. Long ago, the voice murmured, the desert was lit by twin moons. They guided wanderers through night and shadow, silver for truth, gold for dreams. But wanderers began to choose. Some walked only by silver, rejecting dreams. Others followed only gold, rejecting truth. And so the moons quarreled, and one was cast down. The fire shifted, showing one of the moons falling from the sky, shattering into the dunes. The desert shook, swallowing cities, burying temples, leaving only sand. The gold moon sleeps beneath the earth, the voice said, waiting. When truth and dream walk together again, it will rise. The image faded, leaving only the crackle of flame. The traveler's hand trembled. His lantern pulsed faintly, as though remembering the vision. He whispered softly, "Truth and dream together." The lullaby of the sand, the fire calmed, shrinking slightly, and the voice softened into song. It was a lullaby, low and tender, words flowing like shifting grains of sand. "Walk softly, child of dust. The desert is your cradle, the stars your veil. Do not fear the silence, it remembers you, even when you forget yourself." The traveler closed his eyes, his body relaxing into the rhythm. The song was not only for him, it was for all who had ever lain beneath the desert's sky. Weary and seeking rest, he felt tears slip from the corners of his eyes, though he did not know why. Perhaps it was grief, perhaps longing, perhaps relief. The desert seemed to cradle him, rocking him gently, like a mother soothing her child. When the song ended, silence returned, vast but no longer empty. It held him as surely as the earth beneath his body. The fires lessened as the flames dwindled. The voice whispered once more, "Remember, seeker, fire is not only warmth, it is memory. Every flame burns with stories, every spark carries a past. When you walk, do not forget to listen. Even silence speaks." The traveler nodded slowly, though no one stood before him. He pressed his glowing hand to his chest, feeling the pulse within. "I will listen," he whispered. "Even when there are no voices, I will listen." The lantern pulsed softly, as though approving. The traveler lay back, his eyes drifting upward to the stars. The fire crackled gently beside him, the desert's lullaby still humming in his ears. And slowly, carried by the rhythm of flame and sand, he drifted into sleep. The dreaming silent sleep took the traveler gently, as though the desert itself had drawn a veil over him. The crackling of the fire blurred into silence, and silence into visions. He stood, not on the soft sand where he had lain, but upon a wide plain of stone. The sky above was vast, its stars brighter than he had ever seen, arranged into strange, shifting constellations. They did not hold still but moved as though alive, weaving themselves into patterns and breaking apart again. The lantern floated at his side even here, its glow steady, but within the dream it appeared larger, its flame spiraling upward like a silver plume. The traveler touched it, and in that instant, the stars bent lower. The corridor of echoes before him. A corridor formed, not of walls or stone, but of sound, voices layered one upon another, old and young, countless tongues whispering, chanting, laughing, weeping. He stepped into it. The ground shifted beneath his feet like glass, reflecting not his form but the shapes of wanderers before him. Each held lanterns of different colors, blue, gold, crimson, emerald. Some walked alone, others in pairs, some vanished mid-step, leaving only echoes. The voices pressed close, some calling his name, others speaking words he did not know but somehow understood. "Walk further, we are behind you. We are ahead of you. You are never alone." The traveler's chest tightened. He felt both comfort and weight, as though carrying not only himself, but all those who had walked before. The illusion of home. The corridor broke open, and he stood suddenly in a place he recognized, though he could not remember when or how. A small village, quiet, with lanterns hung along doorways. Smoke curled gently from chimneys, the scent of bread in the air. Children laughed, running through narrow streets. A woman's voice called his name, familiar, tender, filled with warmth he had not known in many lifetimes. His heart ached. He wanted to run toward it, to lose himself in its embrace. His hand lifted, trembling, reaching for the lanterns glowing along the doorways. But then he remembered the elder's warning. The second trial is shadow, the third is memory. The desert will give back what you have forgotten. This was not his village. These were not his people. The desert was showing him what he longed for, not what was real. His hand lowered. His throat burned as though refusing life itself. Slowly, painfully, he turned away. At once, the illusion shimmered, dissolving into sand. The laughter became wind, the bread became dust. The woman's voice faded into silence. He fell to his knees, tears burning his eyes. Why must I lose even what I dream? But the lantern flared, answering softly. Its light wrapped around him, warm, steady. You do not lose it, the desert whispered through the flame. You carry it, always. The stranger in the dream, as he rose, wiping his tears, he saw a figure waiting at the far edge of the dream. Cloaked, faceless, standing upon the shifting dunes. Unlike the illusions before, this one did not shimmer or fade. The traveler approached cautiously. The figure remained still until he was near enough to hear. Then, in a voice deep and low, it spoke. "You walk further than most, but every step carries weight. Are you ready to carry it all?" The traveler's voice shook. "I do not know. I only know I cannot stop." The figure tilted its head, as if considering. Then it reached out its hand. In its palm lay a shard of crystal, glowing faintly. "Take it," the figure said. "When the past becomes too heavy, this will remind you that you are more than memory." The traveler hesitated, then extended his marked hand. The shard melted into his skin, vanishing, but its glow merged with his own. His silver mark brightened, now threaded with faint golden lines. The figure's voice lowered. "Walk on. The desert is watching." Then it faded, leaving only the lantern's glow and the endless dunes. Awakening, the traveler gasped awake. The fire beside him had dwindled to embers, the air cool, the stars still sharp above. For a moment he sat in silence, heart pounding, hand trembling. He looked at his palm, and though the silver glow remained faint, he now saw golden threads woven within it, proof the dream had been more than a vision. He touched the pouch of silver dust. Then the lantern hovering close, both pulsed in quiet rhythm, acknowledging what he had endured. The desert had shown him illusions, memories, and a shard of truth. He lay back once more, breathing deeply, letting his body relax. Though he feared the weight of dreams, he also understood they were not prisons, but guides. The lullaby of sand returned to him, softer now, almost within his own breath. "Do not fear the silence. It remembers you, even when you forget yourself." With that, his eyes closed, and he drifted once more into the gentle embrace of sleep. The bridge of dunes. The traveler dreamed again, though this time he knew from the first breath that it was no ordinary dream. He stood upon a bridge, but not of stone or wood. The bridge was made of sand itself, held together by invisible winds. Beneath it stretched an abyss, dark and endless, filled not with earth or shadow but with stars. Each grain of the bridge glittered, faintly as though it remembered its origin from fallen constellations. The traveler's lantern floated by his side, brighter than ever, casting ripples of light along the bridge. He began to walk. Each step stirred the sand beneath his feet, and every grain that fell from the bridge tumbled into the abyss, glowing like a falling star. Behind him, silence pressed close. Ahead, a faint figure waited at the far end of the bridge. Its outline was human, yet blurred, as though woven from starlight itself. The keeper of fire. As the traveler neared, the figure lifted a staff topped with flame, not red or gold, but silver white, glowing like the lantern he carried. Its voice, when it spoke, echoed across the bridge, as if the stars themselves spoke with it. "You carry fire, seeker. Do you know what it means?" The traveler hesitated. "It means survival, light in the dark, a way to see when there is nothing else." The figure's head shook gently. "Not only survival. Fire remembers. Every flame is a witness. Every spark is a memory. You carry not only your story, but the story of all who came before." The traveler's chest tightened. He thought of the nomads, of the elder, of the countless wanderers who had walked the desert's path before him. He thought of their songs, their chants, their wisdom carried in whispers. "If fire carries memory," he asked softly, "then whose memory burns in mine?" The figure lowered the staff. Its flame flickered, revealing faces within it. Wanderers, dreamers, forgotten souls. The traveler recognized none of them, yet each stirred something deep within him, as though part of his own heart remembered. "All of them," the figure answered, "for you are not only yourself, you are the desert's memory walking." The test of reflection. The bridge trembled suddenly, as if shaken by an unseen hand. The traveler looked down into the abyss. This time the stars below formed not constellations, but mirrors. He saw himself reflected in countless ways. In one mirror, he was strong, a leader guiding caravans. In another, he was broken, wandering without lantern or dust, swallowed by the storm. In yet another, he was a child, lost and afraid, calling for someone who never answered. The reflections whispered, "This is you, this is you, this is you." The traveler fell to his knees, overwhelmed. His lantern dimmed, its flame flickering weakly. The bridge's sand began to fall faster, slipping into the abyss. "No," he whispered hoarsely, "I cannot be all of these things." The figure raised its staff, flame blazing. You are, and that is your strength. Not one path, but many. Not one memory, but all. To carry fire is to carry every self you have ever been, every self you will ever be. The traveler closed his eyes, breathing deeply. Slowly, painfully, he reached out his hand toward the lantern. Its flame steadied, pulsing gently, as if reminding him that it had never left. I carry them, he whispered, not as chains, but as light. The mirrors below shattered, dissolving into starlight. The bridge steadied. The desert's lullaby. The figure lowered its staff. Its flame dimmed into a soft glow, almost like a candle before sleep. You will wake soon, it said gently. But remember this, every night you light a fire, you awaken memory. Every time you listen to silence, you hear more than your own voice. Walk with care, seeker, for the desert does not forget. The traveler bowed his head, his chest heavy yet strangely light at the same time. I will remember. Even if it hurts, I will remember. The figure's outline began to blur, its body dissolving into streams of silver light that drifted upward into the stars. The bridge of sand crumbled, falling into the abyss, grain by grain, until only starlight remained. Awakening to embers, the traveler awoke with a start, his body trembling, his breath ragged. The fire beside him had burned down to the faintest embers, their glow pulsing like a heartbeat. The lantern hovered steadily, its flame calm, waiting. He sat upright, pressing his marked hand to his chest. His heart thudded hard, yet beneath it he felt something steady, something enduring. He was not only himself, he was every step taken before him, every flame burned, every story whispered into the desert's silence. And for the first time since his journey began, he did not fear the weight, he welcomed it. The embers cracked softly, releasing one last spark that rose into the air, drifting upward like a star. The traveler watched it fade into the night, then lay back once more. The desert's lullaby returned to him, carried on the wind, not words this time, but rhythm, steady, patient, eternal. And with that rhythm in his chest, he closed his eyes, surrendering again to the silence of sleep, the silent watchers. The night deepened, carrying the traveler into dreams once more. Yet this dream was not storm nor bridge, but stillness. He stood upon an endless flat plain. Dunes stretched far away, hidden under a veil of moonlight. The stars above were vast and uncountable, but they no longer shifted as before. They held steady, like silent watchers, each burning with quiet patience. The traveler felt their gaze upon him, not heavy, not harsh, but tender, like countless guardians surrounding him. He realized that silence itself was alive, and that it watched every step he had ever taken. The lantern hovered near, pulsing faintly, as though reminding him, "You are not forgotten." The memory of a child from the stillness. A sound rose, laughter, faint at first, then clearer, ringing like bells. He turned and saw a child running across the plain, bare feet leaving no mark upon the sand. The child's face was his own, but younger, brighter, eyes wide with innocence. The child stopped before him, holding a small flame cupped in both hands. "Do you remember?" the child asked, voice clear as wind. The traveler's heart clenched. Memories surfaced, chasing fireflies in some forgotten field. Sitting by a hearth long ago, listening to lullabies that promised safety he had lost. Tears filled his eyes. "Yes," he whispered, "I remember." The child smiled and pressed the small flame into his marked hand. The flame merged with his skin, disappearing, but leaving warmth that spread through his chest. "Then walk without fear," the child said softly, "for you carry me still." And with that, the child turned into starlight, vanishing into the night sky. The river of dreams. The plain shifted. Sand melted into water, smooth and black, stretching into the horizon. The traveler stood at its edge, the lantern floating above the river, its flame reflected endlessly in the rippling surface. Each reflection, a possible path. A boat appeared, small and fragile, woven from reeds. He stepped into it, and it carried him silently across the water. The current was slow but steady, guiding him deeper into the unknown. As he drifted, voices rose from the river itself, lullabies, chants, prayers, whispered by countless wanderers. Some were joyous, others sorrowful, but all carried the same rhythm: step, breathe, endure. The traveler closed his eyes, letting the voices wash through him. He realized they were not only the past, but also the future. The desert carried not just memory but destiny. When he opened his eyes, the far shore awaited, glowing faintly with silver light. He stepped from the boat, his feet returning to sand. The circle of fire on the new shore. A ring of fires burned, not fierce, but soft, glowing like lanterns set upon the earth. Each flame pulsed gently, forming a circle around him. He walked among them slowly. Within each fire, he saw a moment, not of his life, but of lives he could not name. A wanderer cradling their child, a nomad dancing under the stars, a caravan sharing bread in the storm. Each flame was a story, burning softly, never fully extinguished. At the circle's center, his lantern descended, hovering just above the sand. Its flame flared, brighter than all the fires around. The voices of the desert whispered, "You are part of the circle, not alone, never alone." The traveler knelt, bowing his head. The circle of flames leaned inward, their warmth folding around him like an embrace. The dawn's arrival when his eyes opened again, he was awake. The sky above was no longer deep night, but the pale blue of approaching dawn. The horizon glowed faintly gold, promising the sun's return. The fire at his side had died completely, only a wisp of smoke lingering, yet he did not feel lost. He felt full, as though the fire's warmth still lived within him. He rose slowly, stretching his stiff limbs. His marked hand glowed faintly, not only silver now but threaded with gold, a memory of the shard given in dream, of the child's flame, of the circle's embrace. The lantern floated at his shoulder, steady, its flame unwavering. The traveler looked out over the dunes, endless as ever, yet softened by dawn's light. For the first time, he did not see emptiness. He saw stories waiting, voices sleeping beneath sand, dreams hidden beneath silence. He whispered softly to the horizon, "I will walk, I will listen, I will remember." And with steady steps, he left the ashes of his fire behind, carrying its memory forward into the desert's endless song. The first light of dawn, the desert at dawn, was a world reborn. The traveler awoke to the hush of morning, when the air was still cool, and the dunes glowed faintly pink beneath the rising sun. The wind that had once carried the storm now brushed gently across the sand, stirring only the lightest grains, as though whispering, "Rest and rise." His lantern hovered beside him, steady and quiet. The flame was small now, as if conserving its strength for the day ahead, but its glow was sharp, unwavering. His marked hand, threaded with silver and gold, still pulsed faintly, a rhythm that matched the steady beat of his heart. For a long moment, he sat in silence, breathing deeply, letting the cool air fill his lungs. The memories of his dreams lingered, child with the flame, the bridge of dunes, the circle of fire. They were not illusions now, but truths he carried forward. "I am not alone," he murmured to the horizon. "I walk with memory." The ashes behind, he turned once to the place where the fire had been. Only a circle of blackened ash remained, pressed into the sand. For most, such a sight might mean nothing, but for him, it was no ordinary ash. As he gazed at it, he saw faint traces glowing within its embers, hidden deep, refusing to fade completely. They pulsed softly, almost as if bowing farewell. The traveler lowered his head. "I will carry you," he whispered, voice hushed as though speaking to a friend. He gathered a small handful of the ash and placed it gently into a pouch at his side. The moment his fingers touched the ash, the lantern pulsed, acknowledging the act. Memory had been honored. Fire would live on. He rose, brushing sand from his cloak, and set his feet once more upon the path of dunes. The singing dunes as the sun climbed higher. The desert began to shift. At first, it was only the wind, a faint hum moving across the slopes of sand. But soon the traveler realized that the sound was no ordinary breeze. The dunes were singing. The wind pressed against the grains at just the right angle, creating a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the air and into his chest. The sound deepened as he walked, joined by higher notes, until the dunes around him resonated like an endless choir. The traveler paused, awestruck. The desert was alive with sound, its silence transformed into song. Each step he took sent faint vibrations into the ground, and the dunes answered, rising and falling with their voices. His lantern pulsed in rhythm, glowing brighter, its flame dancing to the unseen melody. His marked hand tingled, golden lines threading deeper into his skin, binding him closer to the land. "What are you telling me?" he whispered. The wind carried no words, only music, but within the music he felt meaning. The desert was not only memory, it was voice, singing to those who dared to listen. The illusion of companions. As the song deepened, shapes began to form around him. At first only shadows, rising and falling with the dunes, but slowly they sharpened into figures, wanderers, clothed in flowing cloaks, their lanterns glowing in colors he had never seen: blue, crimson, emerald. They walked alongside him, their faces soft and kind, eyes shining like stars. Some carried water, others instruments carved from bone or red. Together they moved as one, in rhythm with the desert's song. The traveler's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, he believed them real. His heart lifted with sudden joy. Companionship after endless solitude. He almost reached out, almost called to them, but deep within, he knew the truth. They were not flesh and bone. They were eco-souls carried forward in the song of the dunes. Companions not of body but of spirit. His lantern flickered, reminding him, they are here, but not as you think. He bowed his head, tears stinging his eyes. Thank you, he whispered, even as echoes, you walk with me. The figures smiled faintly, their lanterns flaring. Then, as the song of the dunes shifted, they dissolved into the air, leaving only footprints that faded almost as soon as they appeared. The trial of heat by midday. The music faded, replaced by the familiar silence of sand. The sun had risen high, its heat fierce and unrelenting. The cool tenderness of dawn was gone. The traveler adjusted his cloak, pulling it tight across his shoulders. Sweat formed upon his brow, stinging his eyes. Each step grew heavier, the sand sliding beneath his boots, threatening to swallow him whole. The dunes stretched endless, shimmering with waves of heat. Mirage after mirage rippled in the distance, lakes that vanished when approached, palm trees that dissolved into air. Exhaustion gnawed at him, his throat burned with thirst, his legs trembled beneath him, his lantern dimmed, its flame fighting against the heat, struggling to hold steady. He stumbled to his knees, the sand scorching even through his clothes. For a moment, despair whispered, you will not cross. You will fall here, forgotten. But then he touched the pouch at his side, the one where he had placed the ash. His fingers pressed against it, feeling the faint warmth still lingering there. And he remembered the circle of fire, the child's flame, the song of the dunes. I walk with memory, he whispered hoarsely. I am not alone. With shaking arms, he pushed himself to his feet. His lantern pulsed faintly, finding strength in his resolve. Step by step, he moved forward again. Toward the next night the sun burned relentlessly, but the traveler endured. Step by step, dune by dune, he pressed forward, guided not by hope of rest but by the memory he carried within him. At last, as the sky deepened once more toward evening, the dunes softened into shades of gold and violet. The air cooled, and shadows stretched long across the sand. The traveler stumbled to the base of a tall dune and sank to his knees. His lantern hovered close, glowing warmly once more. No longer struggling against the sun, he lay back, exhausted, gazing upward as the first stars began to pierce the twilight. The desert's lullaby returned, soft and steady, carried on the evening wind, and with it came a quiet promise that the night fires would rise again, carrying more stories, more dreams. The fire rekindled night settled over the desert like a silken veil, soft and infinite. The traveler, weary from the day's relentless heat, gathered the last fragments of brushwood he carried. His hands trembled as he struck sparks, coaxing them into a fragile flame. Slowly, the fire grew. Its glow stretched into the shadows, pushing them back just enough to carve a circle of warmth in the cold. The lantern floated above the flames, its light weaving with the fire's dance, silver and gold mingling together. The traveler sat close, wrapping his cloak tight against the chill. He exhaled deeply, watching his breath curl into the starlit night. The silence of the desert pressed around him, but it was no longer empty. It felt full, waiting. This is where you speak, he murmured softly. This is where I listen. The flickering faces as the fire burned, its flames began to shift. Shapes flickered within them, faces, fleeting and translucent. Some were smiling, some solemn, others weeping. The traveler leaned forward, mesmerized. One face was of a wanderer, eyes sharp with courage, voice steady. Another was of a child, laughter spilling like bells. Another still was of an elder, lined with age, whispering words too soft to hear. The traveler's throat tightened. These were not random illusions. They were the fire's memory, carrying within it fragments of every soul who had ever kindled flame beneath the desert's stars. He pressed his marked hand close to the fire. The golden lines within his skin glowed brighter, answering the memory. I see you, he whispered. I will not let you be forgotten. The flames steadied, burning, brighter, as though bowing in acknowledgement. The song of the fire, the desert wind shifted, carrying with it a low hum. At first it seemed only the familiar song of the dunes, but soon the sound joined with the crackle of the fire, weaving into melody. The fire sang. Its voice was deep, resonant, woven from the countless sparks that leaped into the night. It did not sing in words but in tones that carried meaning, a lullaby of survival, of memory, of eternal presence. The traveler closed his eyes, letting the sound wash through him. His heart slowed, his breathing softened. It felt as though he were not only hearing the song but becoming part of it, each beat of his chest adding to its rhythm. You are flame, the melody whispered through the crackle. You are memory. You are the voice carried forward. Tears pricked his eyes. He bowed his head, overwhelmed not by sorrow but by belonging. The visitors of smoke from the rising smoke. Shapes began to form, not sharp or clear, but shadowy, woven of mist and ember. Figures gathered around the fire, settling upon the sand as though they had been walking alongside him all along. They carried no weapons, no burdens. Some leaned forward, hands outstretched to the flame. Others sat quietly, watching the stars. A few turned their gaze directly upon the traveler, eyes shimmering with recognition. He did not ask who they were. He already knew. They were the forgotten, the wanderers whose names had been carried away by time. The fire had called them, and he had made space for them by listening. Stay, he whispered, voice cracking, even if only for tonight. Stay. The smoke figures bowed their heads. One reached forward, placing a hand of mist upon his shoulder. Though intangible, the touch radiated warmth, steady and kind. For the first time in many nights, the traveler did not feel alone. The shared silence, they sat together in silence, man, fire, lantern, and shadows. The silence was not empty but filled with meaning. Every spark that leaped into the air seemed to carry a wordless story. Every breath of wind a lullaby too ancient for language. That the traveler realized that silence itself was sacred here. Not the silence of abandonment, but of presence. A silence in which all voices merged and became one. His lantern pulsed softly, as if agreeing, its flame steady beside the fires. He whispered into the stillness, I am listening, and the silence answered, not in words, but in peace. The fire's gift. When the fire had burned low, one last ember flared brighter than the rest. It drifted upward, glowing silver gold, and hovered before the traveler. He reached out instinctively, and the ember settled gently into his marked hand. Instead of burning, it melted into his skin, weaving itself into the golden threads already there. His mark grew brighter, pulsing in rhythm with the lantern's flame. The whisper returned, faint but clear, carry us, remember us. The ember faded, but its warmth remained. The smoke figures slowly dissolved, rising into the night sky like wisps of cloud. The circle around the traveler returned to solitude, yet he did not feel emptiness. He felt full, as though 1,000 companions had walked with him and would continue to walk, unseen but present. He bowed his head to the dying fire. Thank you. Under the watch of stars, the stars above gleamed brighter, as though leaning closer. Their light shimmered across the dunes, turning the desert into a vast sea of silver. The traveler lay upon the sand, the lantern hovering close, the fire reduced to faint ash. His body ached, but his spirit was calm. He closed his eyes, hearing once more the faint hum of the dunes, the song of the fire lingering in his chest. The desert had spoken again, not in storm or illusion, but in quiet. And in that quiet, he found strength. The threshold of dreams. The traveler drifted into sleep beside the ashes of his fire, the desert's cool night wrapping around him like a cloak. The lantern floated close, its silver flame steady, casting a soft glow across the sand. But the moment his eyes closed, he was elsewhere. The dream began not with silence, but with a pulse like the slow beat of a drum, rising from deep within the dunes. Each beat shivered through his bones, echoing like footsteps of something ancient moving beneath the surface of the desert. The sand before him shifted, patterns rose, forming spirals and circles, shapes too deliberate to be random. They glowed faintly gold, as if carved not by wind but by time itself. The desert remembers, a voice whispered. Though no one stood before him, the caravan of shadows. Out of the spirals, figures emerged. At first they were no more than silhouettes, faint against the starlit horizon, but as they drew closer, their forms sharpened, riders on camels, cloaked in flowing garments, lanterns swaying from their saddles. The caravan moved silently, each step sinking into the glowing sand without sound, yet the traveler could feel their presence in his chest, heavy and commanding, like echoes of those who had crossed this land long before him. One rider paused, turning toward him. Beneath the hood, the traveler glimpsed not a face but a mirror, and within it, his own reflection. "You walk where we walked," the rider's voice spoke from the mirror. "Do not think yourself the first, nor the last." The traveler bowed his head. "I know. I carry your memory." The caravan resumed its march, their lanterns swaying in rhythm with the pulse of the desert, until they faded once more into spirals of light. The keeper of Sanda's silence returned. The dunes before him rose higher, forming into a towering shape. Slowly, it resolved into the form of a colossal figure, neither man nor beast, but something between, made entirely of shifting sand. Its eyes glowed like molten suns, and its voice rumbled like a storm. "Seeker," it thundered, "you have listened to fire, you have walked with shadow, but will you listen to the sand itself?" The traveler's knees shook, yet he lifted his chin and answered, "I will." The figure lowered its immense hand, palm open. Within it swirled sand that glowed faintly, each grain pulsing like a heartbeat. "Every grain is a life. Every grain is a memory," the keeper said. "To walk here is to walk upon countless souls. Will you carry their weight?" The traveler reached out with his marked hand. The sand spilled into his palm, searing with heat but not burning, embedding itself into the golden lines of his skin. He gasped, overwhelmed as visions surged through him. A mother singing to her child beneath the stars, a warrior raising his blade against a storm, a wanderer collapsing into the sand, whispering a final prayer. Each life, each story, pressed into him until his chest ached with the weight. "Yes," he whispered through tears, "I will carry them." The keeper's eyes dimmed, and the figure dissolved back into dunes, leaving only the echo of its voice. "Then you are truly a child of the desert." The mirror of the sky, the dream, shifted once more. Above him, the stars rippled like water. Slowly, the sky bent downward, folding into a great mirror that touched the sand at his feet. In its reflection, he saw not the desert but something else, a lush oasis, waters shimmering with moonlight, trees heavy with fruit, travelers laughing in joy. It was paradise, beautiful and impossible. His breath caught. For a fleeting moment, he longed to step through, to abandon the endless dunes for the promise of comfort. But the lantern at his side pulsed sharply, as though warning him. The reflection wavered, and he saw the truth. The oasis was not real. It was temptation, woven from the longing in his own heart. "Not all visions are gifts," the desert whispered. "Some are traps." He closed his eyes, steadied his breath, and turned away from the mirror. At once, it shattered, dissolving into countless shards of starlight that rained down silently upon the sand. The desert's lullaby at last. The pulse of the desert slowed, fading into a gentle rhythm. The spirals in the sand softened, glowing faintly before vanishing. The dream began to dissolve, leaving him once more at the edge of waking. Before he stirred, a final voice reached him, not thunderous, not commanding, but tender and melodic, like a lullaby carried on the wind. "Sleep, seeker, walk tomorrow, remember always." The words sank into him, soothing every ache, quieting every fear. His lantern pulsed once in agreement, its silver flame steady in the dream. And then, with the gentleness of night itself, the dream faded, awakening once more. The traveler awoke with tears on his cheeks, the ashes of his fire glowing faintly at his side. His marked hand pulsed warm with new light, golden threads now woven deeper into his skin. He sat upright, heart heavy but steady, carrying not just his own story but countless others pressed into his soul. The desert was not empty. It was alive. It was endless memory. And with that knowledge, he rose to face the coming dawn. The quiet before dawn. The traveler stirred before the light came. His eyes opened into darkness, still touched by stars, though the horizon carried the faintest blush of coming day. The desert was hushed, its breath slow, as if it too awaited the sun's return. He sat upright, brushing sand from his cloak. His lantern hovered faithfully, flame steady, no longer bright from dream but calm, as if it too had rested. The ash of his fire was little more than a pale ring, but faint warmth lingered, whispering, "You are not forgotten." He touched his marked hand to the ash and bowed his head. Each dream still echoed in his chest: the caravan of shadows, the keeper of sand, the shattering mirror. They were not gone with sleep. They lived within him now. "I will carry them forward," he whispered. The breath of morning he rose and turned eastward. The sky had begun to bloom with color lavender at first, then streaks of rose and amber. Slowly, the golden crown of the sun peeked over the dunes, sending shafts of light spilling across the endless sea of sand. The first warmth of day kissed his skin, and the cold night retreated. The desert, so harsh by day and haunting by night, now appeared almost tender. Dunes glowed soft gold, their edges sharp but not cruel. The air smelled faintly of stone, of dust, of something ancient that lingered unseen. But Traveler breathed deeply, filling his chest. His exhaustion did not vanish, but it became bearable. Softened by the promise of morning dot, the lantern pulsed once, reflecting the sun's first rays. For a fleeting moment, flame and dawn were indistinguishable. The path revealed as he climbed the nearest dune. The sand felt firmer beneath his boots, as though guiding him forward. The crest came slowly, each step pulling at his legs, but when he reached the top, the view opened wide. Far ahead, the desert stretched as always, but not empty. In the distance, faint shapes shimmered, not of water or trees, but of stone, pillars half buried in sand, glinting faintly in the dawnlight, like fragments of a forgotten temple. His heart quickened. The dreams had spoken of memory, of keepers in shadows. Now the waking world echoed them. Perhaps the ruins held the answers he sought, or perhaps only deeper questions. But either way, he knew he must reach them. His lantern flared slightly, agreeing. Then onward, he murmured, the weight of memory as he descended the dune. His marked hand tingled again. The golden threads etched within it glowed faintly in the morning light. With each pulse, he felt weight stories pressed into him, countless voices carried in grains of sand, in sparks of fire. At first, it frightened him. Could one soul carry so much without breaking? But the warmth of the mark was not crushing. It was steady, balanced, like a hand upon his shoulder, reminding him that burden and gift were one. He recalled the keeper's words, "Every grain is a life." The dunes beneath his boots no longer felt like obstacles. They were not merely sand, but the resting place of lives, layered one upon another. And with each step, he was not erasing them, but honoring them. Companions of light. The sun climbed higher, burning away the last traces of night. Yet as the brightness grew, he noticed something remarkable. The faintest outlines of figures walked beside him, translucent as glass, visible only in the corner of his vision. He turned his head, and they vanished. But when he looked forward again, they were there still, keeping pace. These were no longer illusions born of hunger or mirage. These were echoes, the same companions of smoke and flame, now walking with him in daylight. Some carried lanterns, others waterskins, some only walked with empty hands, but their presence was undeniable. He did not reach out. He did not need to. Their company was enough. "Thank you," he whispered again. The desert gave no answer, but the silence carried silence that accepted his gratitude. The desert's voice. By midday, the heat returned, pressing down heavy upon his shoulders. His cloak clung to him, sweat dampening his brow. Yet the silence was not harsh this time. It was filled with rhythm, the crunch of sand beneath his boots, the whisper of wind over the dunes, the faint hum of memory. For the first time since his journey began, he realized the desert did not oppose him. It was not enemy, nor punishment. It was teacher. It stripped away illusion, revealed the truth, and demanded respect in return. The lantern's flame pulsed in slow rhythm, matching the beat of his steps. It no longer seemed separate from the desert's voice, but part of it. The traveler smiled, faintly. "I hear you," he whispered to the dunes, and though no sound came back, the warmth in his marked hand told him he had been heard. Toward the forgotten temple. By late afternoon, he drew nearer to the shapes he had glimpsed from the dune's crest. What had first seemed like broken pillars now revealed themselves as ruins scattered across the sand. Stone blocks, half-buried carvings eroded by time, archways collapsed but not forgotten. The traveler paused, staring. His heart pounded, not with fear but with awe. The desert remembers. The whisper from his dream returned, clear as day. His lantern flared, its light brushing across the ruins. The golden threads within his hand pulsed in answer. This was no mirage. This was where memory slept, and he had been brought here for a reason. Closing of the day as the sun began to lower once more, painting the dunes in crimson and gold, the traveler stood before the ruins. His body was weary, his throat dry, but his spirit was steady. The voices of the night fires, the song of the dunes, the caravan of shadows all had led him here. He stepped forward, his lantern lighting the way into the embrace of ancient stone. The desert had given him stories. Now, within these ruins, it would give him truths. And as twilight fell, he whispered to himself, soft as a prayer, I walk with memory, I am not alone. The silent gate. The traveler stood at the edge of the ruins as the last light of evening stretched across the desert. Before him rose broken stone pillars, their surfaces carved with inscriptions eroded by sand and centuries. What remained was fractured but powerful, as though each piece still hummed with the weight of memory. The wind moved differently here. It did not sweep freely across the dunes but whispered, low and reverent, carrying with it fragments of forgotten words. His lantern hovered higher, its flame glowing brighter than it had all day. As though drawn by the presence of these ancient stones, the golden threads in his marked hand pulsed gently, guiding him forward. He placed his palm against one of the pillars. The stone was warm, not from the sun but from something deeper, something alive within it. I have found you, he whispered, or perhaps, you have found me. The corridor of shadows. He stepped between the crumbled archways. The air within the ruins was cooler, shadowed. Stone walls rose on either side, half buried in sand, forming corridors that twisted like forgotten streets. The traveler moved slowly, each footstep stirring grains that had lain untouched for ages, that it felt less like he was exploring and more like he was returning. The lantern floated low, its glow spilling across broken carvings etched into the walls. He traced his fingers over the shape spirals, stars, figures holding flames. Though worn, they echoed the very dreams he had seen by the night fires. The fire has always been here, he murmured, waiting. The echoes awakened as he walked deeper. The silence began to shift. At first it was subtle, like the faint ringing of distant bells. But soon, voices began to ripple through the air. They were not clear, not words, but echoes, laughter, weeping, murmurs of traders bargaining, children calling to one another, footsteps scuffing against stone. The traveler froze. The ruins were not empty, they were alive with memory. He turned a corner and entered a wider space, a vast courtyard half filled with sand. There, the echoes grew stronger. Shapes flickered in the air, merchants at stalls of light, wanderers offering strange goods, travelers pausing to rest their weary feet. That was a market, but not of flesh and stone. It was the market of echoes, the stalls of memory. The traveler stepped cautiously into the courtyard. All around him, phantom stalls stretched in rows, each one shimmering as though woven from smoke and starlight. Upon them lay objects that shifted with each glance, a vial of water that sparkled like diamonds, a blade that hummed softly, a cloth that glowed faintly with warmth. Behind each stall stood a figure, faceless yet present, their voices carrying the cadence of bargaining. Water for a memory, one voice whispered. A flame for a truth, murmured another. What will you trade, seeker? The traveler's breath caught. This was no ordinary place. It was where souls had come not to buy with coin, but to exchange pieces of themselves. His lantern flickered uneasily, as though warning him to tread carefully. The temptation of trade's one stall caught his eye. Upon it lay a crystal vial filled with water so clear it seemed impossible in the desert. Its glow shimmered, reflecting stars not yet risen. Take it, the stallkeeper whispered, voice smooth as silk. Quench your thirst, strengthen your body, but leave a memory in return. The traveler hesitated. Which memory? He asked. Leaned forward. Any you choose. A sorrow to forget, or a joy to surrender. Trade, and walk lighter. His throat ached with thirst. Every step he had taken in the heat returned to him, sharp and bitter. The vial glittered, so close, so tempting. But he thought of the ash in his pouch. The ember pressed into his skin, the weight of voices carried within him. To surrender memory was to betray what he had sworn to carry. He shook his head. No, I walk with memory. I cannot leave it behind. The stall shimmered, then vanished, leaving only sand. The lantern's flame steadied, approving. The bargain of shadows. Another stall appeared beside him. Upon it lay a cloak woven from shadow itself, rippling as though alive. Wear it, the voice whispered, and you will never feel the sun's burn again. Walk the desert without pain. The traveler reached out, fingers trembling. The cloak was cool to the touch, soothing, almost intoxicating. But as he held it, he noticed something, his reflection in its folds, and in that reflection, his lantern was gone. His marked hand was unlit. The price of the cloak was not named, but it was clear, to embrace its shade was to lose his light. He withdrew his hand at once. I cannot walk in darkness. The cloak dissolved into air, leaving behind only silence. The realization the traveler stood still, breath unsteady. Around him, stalls shimmered and faded, each whispering new offers safety, strength, relief. Each demanded a piece of him in return. The market of echoes was not about goods, it was about choices. About what a seeker was willing to surrender, in pursuit of survival or power. But he had already chosen. He would walk burdened, thirsty, and weary because what he carried mattered more than what he lacked. His lantern pulsed warmly, its flame rising higher than before. The golden threads in his hand glowed bright, spreading further across his skin. The market hushed, the voices faded, and for the first time since he had entered, the traveler felt not temptation, but clarity. Closing of the block, he stood alone, in the courtyard, the stalls dissolving one by one, until only stone and sand remained. The ruins were silent again, shadows stretching across them as twilight deepened. But he was not the same. He had walked through temptation and chosen memory over ease. He stepped forward, deeper into the ruins, where greater secrets awaited. His lantern glowed steady, guiding his way, and the desert whispered softly, like a voice hidden in the stones. Well done, seeker. Walk onward. The market shifts. The courtyard grew darker as the sun slid below the horizon. Shadows stretched across the ruins, blending with the flickering stalls of the market of echoes. The traveler moved deeper into the square, and with each step, the marketplace shifted around him. The stalls multiplied, forming winding lanes lit by lanterns of pale fire. The air buzzed with voices, not one, but many, overlapping like a song without melody. Some voices laughed, others wept, others whispered, promises sweet as honey. Each beckoned him closer, pulling at his resolve. His lantern trembled slightly, its silver flame resisting the weight of so many illusions. The traveler steadied it with his hand. I will not lose myself, he murmured, but the market heard him, and it smiled. The stall of lost time. He came upon a stall draped in fabric that shimmered like water. Upon its surface lay a single hourglass, sand glowing as it fell slowly from one chamber to another. The keeper of the stall leaned forward, faceless, voice low and soothing. Time, seeker, have you not wished for more of it? Walk the desert in moments, not years. Trade with me, and your journey will shorten. You will reach your destination without pain, without loss. The traveler's heart lurched. The desert had already demanded so much: the endless days of heat, the nights of shivering cold, the ache of each step. To move faster, to escape the grinding weight of time. How tempting it was. He reached out, brushing the glass. At once, visions filled his mind, crossing the dunes in a single heartbeat, reaching the valley of dreams without ever feeling thirst or fatigue. But as quickly as the vision came, he saw its shadow. In the rush of speed, he missed everything: the voices of the dunes, the fire's song, the keeper's words. He saw himself arriving at the end, empty-handed, carrying no stories, no weight, no truth. He withdrew his hand. Time is not mine to bargain. I must live it, to learn it. The hourglass cracked silently, dissolving into streams of sand that melted into the courtyard floor. The stall vanished. The child of echoes further down. He saw a small figure waiting by a stall of glowing shells. Unlike the other keepers, this one had form, a child, barefoot, with eyes bright as stars. The child held a shell to their ear, and smiled. Listen. The traveler hesitated, then leaned closer. The shell whispered with the sound of waves he had never seen, never known. Oceans rolling endlessly, seagulls calling, salt on the breeze. Tears welled in his eyes. He had never stood by an ocean, yet the memory felt real. You may keep it, the child said sweetly. For just one of your burdens, leave behind a sorrow, a heavy weight, and take this instead. Wouldn't you rather remember joy than pain? The traveler's chest ached. He thought of his long nights, his loneliness, the grief he carried from those he had lost. To let one sorrow slip away was such a gentle offer, but his hand closed into a fist. Sorrow is not weakness, it is part of what I carry. Without it, I would not understand the voices of the desert. The child's smile faded, and the shells turned to dust. But before vanishing, the child bowed their head. Then you walk, true. The last bargain at the end of the lane, the traveler reached the largest stall yet. It stood taller than the rest, draped in dark cloth embroidered with gold. On the table lay nothing. The keeper here was different, not faceless mist, but a tall figure cloaked in deep crimson. Its eyes gleamed amber, sharp and piercing. "You have resisted water, shade, time, even joy," the keeper said, voice rich and resonant, "but every seeker has a price. Let us speak yours." The traveler swallowed hard. "I will not trade." The keeper smiled faintly. "Not yet. But listen." He raised his hand, and in an instant, the stall filled with an object so simple, so devastating, a stone lantern, identical to the traveler's own. Its silver flame glowed steady, a perfect mirror of the one floating beside him. The traveler froze. "Trade with me," the keeper said, softly. "Give me your lantern. In return, I will give you another brighter, stronger, everlasting. Yours is weak, fragile, a mere spark compared to what I offer. With this new light, you will never lose your way. You will never walk alone again." The traveler stared at the false lantern. Its flame was indeed brighter, dazzling, radiant. For a moment, he imagined carrying it, ever fearing the night, never stumbling in the dunes, never doubting his steps. But then he looked at his own lantern. Its flame was small, but steady. It had walked with him since the beginning. It had pulsed in his dreams, warned him of illusions, sung with the fire, kept him alive. It was not just light, it was companionship. "No," he said firmly, "this one is mine. It is not powerful, but it is true." The Crimson Keeper's eyes narrowed. The false lantern shattered into shards of shadow, scattering like smoke. "So be it," the keeper whispered. "But no, this truth is heavier than lies, and you will carry that weight until the end." The figure dissolved into darkness, leaving the stall empty. The market falls silent. The traveler stood alone. The stalls around him began to fade, one by one, their voices dimming, until only silence remained. The courtyard was empty again, filled with only stone, shadow, and sand. But he was changed. He had resisted the bargains. He had chosen truth over ease, memory over relief, light over false brilliance. The market of echoes had tested him, and though it had not given, it had revealed. His lantern floated close, its silver flame warm and steady. His marked hand pulsed brighter than ever, golden lines spreading like veins of fire beneath his skin. He placed his palm against his heart. "I walk with what is mine. I will not trade it away." The ruins shivered, as if the stones themselves acknowledged his vow. Closing of the block, the traveler turned toward the deeper passageways of the ruins. The night was fully upon the desert now, stars glittering like countless watchful eyes above. The market of echoes was gone, but its lesson lingered, that the greatest danger was not the desert's hunger, but his own. With steady breath, he stepped forward into the shadows, lantern lighting the way, and the silence of the desert welcomed him. No longer a test, but a companion. Into the depths of ruins the courtyard lay silent behind him, where moments ago phantom stalls had shimmered and voices had whispered. Now only sand and stone remained. The traveler moved onward, deeper into the ruins. Narrow corridors stretched before him, walls leaning inward, as if the desert itself sought to reclaim them. His lantern floated ahead, casting its silver glow over carvings nearly erased by time, spirals of stars, figures carrying flames, and symbols of water, carved in stone, whispered of a world that once thrived here. The further he walked, the more the air grew cool, as though he were stepping beneath the desert itself. And then, he found it, a passage partly sealed by fallen rock, a narrow crack between slabs of sandstone. The lantern pulsed faintly, urging him forward. A hidden chamber, he breathed. Perhaps the heart of it all. The chamber of stillness. He squeezed through the opening, boots scraping stone. On the other side lay a vast chamber buried beneath the dunes, its ceiling held by ancient pillars that glittered faintly with quartz veins. The air was still, so still it felt as if even time had paused here. In the center of the chamber lay a raised platform, upon which rested a great bowl carved of black stone. Within it, sand swirled endlessly, though no wind touched it. The grains glowed faintly like embers, each carrying a pulse of light thought. The traveler approached slowly, reverently. His marked hand tingled, golden threads glowing in answer. The lantern dimmed, as though bowing before this deeper light. This was no ordinary place. It was memory itself, gathered and kept safe from the ravages of desert winds. The sound of voices as he neared the bowl. The swirling sand began to rise. Grains lifted into the air, spiraling around him like a living storm of light. And with them came voices soft, layered, countless. "We walked here before you," they whispered. "We traded, we dreamed, we fell, we rose. We are the market, we are the dunes, we are the fire, we are the thirst." The traveler bowed his head, overwhelmed. Each grain was a story, a soul, a fragment of existence long past but never lost. The sand wrapped around his arm, glowing threads weaving into the markings on his hand. He gasped as visions poured into him, flashes of markets bustling with life, caravans arriving from distant lands, night fires burning bright beneath the stars, and then the fall, storms that buried cities, winds that swallowed memory, silence where laughter once lived. The desert had not only preserved, it had also taken. The tale of beginnings, the voices grew clearer, forming a story woven from countless whispers. Once, long ago, this desert was not endless sand but a sea of green and rivers. People gathered here, trading, singing, dreaming, but they grew greedy. They sought to bargain not only with one another but with the desert itself, seeking to own time, to bind memory, to control fire. The market of echoes was born, a place of endless trade. Yet in their hunger, they forgot that every trade takes something away. The swirling sand thickened, and the traveler saw visions, men and women clutching false treasures, memories slipping through their hands, children born with no past. The desert wept. The voices continued, and in its grief, it rose in storm. The green was swallowed, the rivers turned to dust, and the market of echoes became what you saw: phantoms, bargains without end. Only the stories remain, waiting for those who would listen. The sand pulsed, surrounding him like a constellation brought to earth. "You have resisted the bargains, seeker. You have chosen weight over ease, truth over lies. For this, the desert allows you to carry its memory further. Do not forget, it is not survival alone that matters, but remembrance, the gift of memory." The storm of sand slowed, spiraling once more into the black stone bowl. Yet one handful lingered, hovering above his marked hand. Slowly, it poured into his palm, glowing grains fusing with the golden threads etched in his skin. He gasped as warmth spread through him, not burning, not heavy, but steady. His chest filled with a new clarity. He carried not just voices of travelers and shadows of fires, but now the desert's own origin, its grief, its loss, its resilience. That the lantern flared brightly in agreement, its silver flame glowing almost golden for a heartbeat. The traveler bowed deeply. "I will remember. I will walk with your story." The chamber hushed, satisfied. Leaving the chamber, when he stepped back from the bowl, the chamber seemed to sigh. The pillars shimmered faintly, dust falling softly from their ancient crowns. He knew he could not remain here forever. Memory was gift, not prison. To carry it was to walk forward. He turned toward the narrow passage, lantern leading the way. The chamber grew darker behind him, until only silence remained. Back in the ruins corridor, the air felt lighter, as though the stones themselves had shed some of their burden into him. Closing of the block as he emerged from the ruins, and stood once more beneath the vast desert sky. The stars greeted him with brilliance. The market of echoes had tested his resolve. The hidden chamber had given him truth, and now, with his marked hand glowing brighter than ever, he carried both. That the traveler looked eastward, where dunes stretched endlessly under starlight. "I will walk onward," he whispered, "not for myself alone, but for all who came before." The desert answered not with words, but with silence deep, eternal, and filled with memory. Emerging from the ruins, the traveler stepped out of the narrow stone passage into the night air. The ruins behind him loomed silent, their broken pillars glimmering faintly beneath starlight. He paused, turning once more to look back. In those ancient halls he had walked among illusions, resisted temptations, and received a story carried by the desert itself. The market of echoes no longer shimmered before his eyes, but he felt its weight inside him. The offers whispered, the bargains declined, the clarity chosen. The hidden chamber still pulsed faintly in his marked hand, each golden thread warm with memory. For a long while, he stood motionless, breathing the desert wind. It carried neither heat nor chill now, only stillness. as though the land itself watched him in quiet approval. "Thank you," he whispered toward the ruins. "I will not forget." The lantern's flame, his lantern floated at his side, its silver flame glowing more steadily than ever. It no longer trembled in the wind, no longer flickered uncertainly. The traveler reached out and brushed his fingers against its warmth. It had been with him from the beginning, guiding, warning, protecting, and though he had been offered greater lights, brighter illusions, he knew now this small flame was more powerful than all of them, because it was true. The lantern pulsed once in answer, like a heartbeat. "We walked together," the traveler murmured, and for the first time he realized he no longer thought of the flame as an object, but as a companion. A desert transformed, he turned his gaze eastward. The dunes rolled on endlessly, glowing pale under the stars. But something had shifted. Where before the desert had seemed cruel, heavy, empty, now it appeared alive. Every ridge of sand shimmered faintly, as if carrying a secret light. Every breeze hummed softly, like distant music. The traveler realized it was not the desert that had changed, but himself. He could now see the threads woven within each: memories of lives, the voices of fires, the sorrow of storms, the strength of survival. Each grain of sand was no longer just obstacle but story. He took his first step forward, and the dunes seemed to welcome him. The farewell of echoes as he descended the slope. He heard faint whispers rise behind him. They were not clear words, but echoes, the voices of the market, soft and fading, like a farewell carried on the wind. "Seeker, walk true, carry us, remember." He closed his eyes, bowing his head in silence. He did not turn back. Farewells were not chains but gifts. The voices faded into stillness, and he walked onward with steady steps. The stars above night deepened, and the stars unfolded in full brilliance. Constellations stretched wide, burning fiercely, as though they had been waiting for him to emerge. The traveler paused upon a high dune, gazing upward. The stars felt different now, not distant fires, but lanterns of their own, guiding countless paths across eternity. He lifted his marked hand, golden threads glowing faintly. For a moment, it seemed the stars above mirrored the same pattern, the same veins of light etched across the sky. "We are the same," he whispered. "Each light a story, each story a flame." The desert wind stirred, carrying sand like sparks of gold into the air. It was as though the sky and the earth bowed together in acknowledgement, the burden and the gift. As he continued, the traveler reflected on what he carried. His pouch still held the ember from the night fire. His hand bore the desert's markings, his lantern bore its steady flame. And now, within him, rested the tale of beginnings, the grief and resilience of the desert itself. It was heavy, yes, but for the first time, he did not fear the weight. "The burden is the gift," he whispered. "To walk empty is to arrive hollow. To walk burdened is to arrive whole." The words were not his alone. They were the desert's, the fires, the echoes. He merely spoke them aloud. A new resolve. By midnight, he had reached a ridge overlooking the endless expanse. He paused there, lantern steady at his side, eyes scanning the horizon. Somewhere beyond lay the wells of memory, where water held forgotten truths. Beyond that, the final stretch of exhaustion and betrayal. And finally, the valley of dreams. The journey was long, but he was no longer afraid. "Let the desert test me again," he whispered. "I will not surrender what is mine." His marked hand pulsed brightly in answer, as though sealing his vow. Closing of Chunk 1, the ruins faded behind him, swallowed by dunes and distance. Ahead stretched the roadless desert, vast and silent, but he no longer walked as one. He walked with fire, with memory, with echoes of countless voices. His lantern's flame burned steady, silver light guiding his steps across the sand. And as he disappeared into the night, the desert whispered softly, not with temptation now, but with trust. "Walk onward, seeker. We are with you." The long night march. The traveler moved eastward, the ruins shrinking into darkness behind him. The desert stretched wide and silent, dunes rolling like frozen waves under the brilliance of the stars. His lantern floated by his side, its silver flame casting a narrow circle of light across the sand. Beyond its glow, the world seemed infinite, yet strangely alive. Each step he took pressed softly into the dunes, the sand shifting but never resisting. It was as though the desert, having tested him, now allowed him passage with quiet respect. Yet, silence in the desert was never empty. Beneath the hush, he heard faint whispers, the low hum of wind between dunes, the sigh of sand sliding down slopes. the distant cry of a nightbird hunting unseen prey. He walked steadily, his marked hand glowing faintly, its golden threads warm against his skin. "The market is behind me," he murmured, "but its lesson walks with me still." The weight of memory as the night deepened, his thoughts wandered. He recalled the phantom stalls, the tempting bargains, the false lantern brighter than his own. He remembered the bowl of swirling sand in the hidden chamber, and how it had poured into his palm the desert's grief and resilience. That memory was heavy now, sitting like a stone in his chest, but with each step he realized it was not a weight to break him, it was a weight that anchored him. Every grain a story, he whispered to himself, every step a remembrance. The lantern pulsed gently in answer, as though approving his reflection. The mirage of companions' hours passed. The night air grew colder, and his breath rose faintly in silver wisps. His body longed for rest, but his spirit urged him forward. It was then, on the horizon, that he saw them, figures dark against the pale sand walking alongside him. At first he thought them travelers, a caravan moving under the stars. But, as they drew closer, he realized their steps made no sound. Their lanterns glowed faintly, but not with silver flame. Instead, they flickered like dying embers. The traveler slowed, watching them with wary eyes. They did not turn to him, did not speak. They simply walked, their heads bowed, their forms blurred like smoke. He felt a shiver run through him. These were not living companions. They were echoes, wanderers who had once crossed this desert and never reached the Valley of Dreams. The lesson of the lost. He stood still, watching the figures pass. Their silence was heavy, filled with unspoken stories. One figure stumbled, collapsing into the sand, where it dissolved like mist. Another reached forward, as though to grasp a hand that was not there. Before fading into the night air, the traveler's chest ached. These were souls who had made trades in the market, or perhaps lost themselves to storms, or perhaps simply given in to despair. The desert remembered them, but only as shadows. He whispered softly, "I will carry you too. You will not be forgotten." His marked hand glowed brighter for a moment, and the phantoms flickered, their fading lanterns glowing just slightly stronger before vanishing completely. The night was empty again, but the traveler knew it was not emptiness. It was memory carried forward. The call of the wells. Not long after, the air shifted. A faint coolness brushed his face. Unlike the sharp chill of desert nights, this was deeper, heavier, like breath rising from beneath the earth. He stopped, listening. On the wind came a sound, soft, rhythmic, like water dripping into stone. His heart quickened. Water, but more than water. He knew this sound, though he had never heard it with his ears. It was the call of the wells of memory. The lantern pulsed sharply, urging him onward. He began walking faster, his boots sinking into the sand, his breath coming quicker. The desert stretched endlessly, yet the sound grew clearer with each step. Drip, drip, drip. Each note felt like a heartbeat, like a memory calling to him, the warning of dreams. Yet as he moved, the dunes began to blur. The stars above shimmered strangely, bending and twisting. The sand beneath his feet shifted into patterns, swirls that spiraled outward as though leading him into a maze. The lantern flickered, struggling to hold steady. He realized this was no simple path. The wells did not lie open to any wanderer. They drew travelers forward, but they also tested them through dreams, illusions, and memories too heavy to bear. The traveler closed his eyes for a moment, breathing steady. "I will not run. I will walk, true. If it is memory you ask of me, I will face it." When he opened his eyes again, the patterns in the sand calmed slightly, though the air still shimmered with unease. The first dreamet, the next dune's crest. He froze. There, in the hollow below, he saw a fire. Its flame flickered golden, warm, and familiar. Around it sat figures, men and women, their faces clear, their voices rising in laughter and song. His heart clenched. These were the same night fires he had once dreamt of, the same voices that had guided him, but they looked at him now not as voices, but as living souls. Their eyes shone with recognition, as though they had been waiting for him. One voice called softly, "Sit with us. Rest. Leave the desert behind." The traveler's throat ached. The fire looked so real, its warmth so inviting. To stop here, to belong, to never walk alone again. How easy it would be, but he knew this was not a true fire. It was a dream, woven by the wells to test him. He whispered aloud, "You are part of me, but not my end." The figure smiled sadly, then faded like smoke. The fire sank into the sand, leaving only silence and stars. Closing of the block, traveler stood tall on the dune, his breath heavy but his resolve steady. The wells of memory were close. He could hear their call in the air, see their shimmer at the horizon, but he knew they would not be reached by thirst alone. They would test him first, not with storms or bargains, but with the deepest weight of all, his own heart. He tightened his grip on the lantern's flame, letting it guide him, and with steady steps, he walked onward into the dream-laden desert night. The desert's mirror, the desert stretched endlessly, yet the sound of dripping water grew louder, steadier, filling the air like a heartbeat. The traveler's lantern cast a silver path over the dunes, but the sands around him had begun to shimmer unnaturally. The starlight above bent downward, reflecting in strange patterns. It was as though he walked not across sand, but across a mirror polished by memory itself. Each step left not only a print of his foot but a flicker of something else, a shadow of his past, playing across the dunes like faint smoke. At first, he ignored them, but soon, the shadows sharpened. He saw himself, younger, walking through a village alleyway, laughter spilling around him. He saw his family's home, a hearth burning brightly. He saw faces he had not remembered in years. He stopped, breath caught in his chest. Why now? Why show me this? The desert gave no answer, only silence and shimmering light. The face of the mother from the shadows rose, a figure clearer than the rest. It was a woman, standing at the edge of the dune. Her face soft, eyes filled with warmth, her hands extended toward him as if in welcome. The traveler's heart lurched. His mother, she had passed many years ago, so many that her voice had faded from his dreams, and yet, here she stood, so real he could almost hear her breath. "My son," she said softly, voice carrying on the wind. "You walk in pain, you wander alone, come to me, and rest." His throat ached, his knees weakened. How he longed to step forward, to be held once more, to bury his head in the arms that had carried him as a child. Tears welled in his eyes. He stretched his hand forward, then stopped. The lantern pulsed sharply, its silver flame flickering in warning. He froze. This was not her. It was memory, dressed in dream, summoned by the wells to test his resolve. Slowly, painfully, he lowered his hand. "I carry you with me always," he whispered, "but I cannot return to you. I must go forward." The figure smiled faintly, then dissolved into starlight, leaving only silence and sand. The weight of regret. He stumbled onward, shaken. His chest ached as if the memory itself had clawed at his heart. But the desert was not finished. As he climbed the next dune, another vision appeared, himself again, but older, sitting in silence by an unlit fire. His lantern was gone, his marked hand dim. His eyes were hollow, staring into nothing. "This could be you," a voice whispered from the wind. "Alone, forgotten, carrying too much until it breaks you." The traveler clenched his fists, shaking his head. "No, I walk with burden, yes, but burden is not despair." The hollow figure did not move, only stared. Its emptiness pressed down on him, cold as death, but his lantern flared suddenly, scattering the illusion. The hollow self dissolved, like dust in sunlight. He breathed heavily, steadying himself. The wells were testing not only his love, but his fear. The river beneath the sand. As he pressed forward, the sound of water grew stronger, until he realized it was no longer only a drip. It was a flow, soft, steady, like a hidden stream, running beneath the dunes. He stopped, pressing his palm to the sand. It was cool here, unlike the dryness he had felt for so long. Beneath the surface, he swore he felt vibration, the hum of water moving through hidden veins. His heart quickened. The wells were near. Yet, as he listened closer, the water carried more than sound. It carried whispers. "Remember us. Do not turn away. Drink and see." The voices overlapped, countless and yearning. It was not merely water. It was memory itself, flowing beneath the desert. The child he once was before he could rise. Another vision formed on the sand before him. This one struck deeper than all the rest. A boy barefoot, laughing, eyes bright as dawn, stood in the dunes. The traveler froze. This was himself, younger, untouched by sorrow, carrying dreams too wide for the world. The boy grinned at him. "Why do you carry so much?" he asked. "You could let it go. You could walk free again, light as I am. Wouldn't you rather return to this?" The traveler's throat closed. To return to innocence, to live without weight, to be unburdened. It was tempting, beyond measure. But he shook his head slowly. "I cannot be you again," he whispered. "And I would not trade what I carry, My weight is what makes me real. Without it, I would only be a shadow. The boy's smile faded. His form crumbled into sand, carried away by the desert wind. Call sharpens. The traveler rose, his chest heavy but his steps steady. The air shifted once more. Ahead, the horizon shimmered, not with starlight, but with something depera, faint blue glow rising faintly from the sand. He knew then, the wells of memory were close. The voices grew stronger, layered with both sorrow and sweetness. They called, not only to his thirst but to his soul. Come, seeker, drink, and remember. The traveler tightened his grip on the lantern. I will come, he whispered, but I will not lose myself. And with that vow, he descended the dune toward the glow. First sight of the wells, the dunes parted like curtains, and there it was. Nestled in a hollow of sand lay a cluster of stone basins, carved deep into the earth. From their depths rose a faint blue glow, soft and mesmerizing. Water rippled within them, but it was no ordinary water. Each drop shimmered like liquid starlight, reflecting constellations even brighter than those overhead. The traveler stood frozen at the crest of the dune, heart pounding. He had walked countless miles through silence and shadow, but nothing compared to this sight. The wells of memory. They were not wide, not vast, but their presence filled the desert more powerfully than any storm. The air hummed with their energy, vibrating softly against his skin. He felt as though 1,000 voices waited beneath that glowing surface, each one ready to speak if only he listened. The stillness before he descended slowly, boots sinking into soft sand, every step deliberate. The lantern hovered beside him, its silver flame glowing faintly, as though humbled before the well's brilliance. For the first time since the journey began, the lantern did not lead, it merely followed. When he reached the basin's edge, he paused, staring into the water. It was not still, not restless either. The surface rippled faintly, though no wind touched it. Within the glow, he glimpsed flickers, faces, moments, lives. They passed like shadows beneath water, too quick to grasp, yet unmistakably real. A child running, a warrior raising his blade, a mother cradling her child, an elder whispering into the fire. Memories, not his alone, but countless. The wells held not one story, but all stories ever lived. The guardian of silences. He leaned closer. The air shifted. From the shadows at the basin's far side, a figure emerged, tall, robed in flowing cloth that shimmered like moonlight on water. The figure carried no lantern, no weapon. Its face was hidden, but its presence was undeniable, both gentle and vast. Like the desert itself given form, the traveler's breath caught. The guardian of the wells. The figure raised a hand, palm open in greeting, but spoke no words. Instead, silence deepened, pressing heavily around them. The traveler bowed his head respectfully. I have walked far, he said softly. I seek not to steal, not to bargain, only to carry memory. The guardian tilted its head, as though measuring the truth in his voice. Then it extended its arm, gesturing toward the water. Permission. Reflection in the water. The traveler knelt at the edge of the basin. For a long moment, he hesitated. The blue glow lit his face, casting shadows across his tired eyes. His marked hand pulsed faintly, golden threads trembling, as if uncertain. He leaned forward, the surface rippled, and his reflection looked back at him. But it was not the face he knew. It shifted, becoming younger, then older. It became the child he once was, then the hollow man of despair he had seen in the dunes. It became his mother, smiling gently, then strangers whose lives he had never known. Every shift carried weight, every face another fragment of memory. His chest tightened. If he touched the water, he knew he would not see just himself. He would see all that was carried here. The guardian remained silent, watching. The choice. He closed his eyes, steadying his breath. To drink is to carry, he whispered. But to carry is to bear both joy and sorrow. Was he ready? He thought of the market of echoes, where false bargains tempted him. He thought of the chamber of sand, where the desert's grief had poured into his hand. He thought of the night fires, of the phantoms who walked beside him. He realized then he was already carrying them. The wells would not break him. They would simply make visible what was already within him. Opening his eyes, he placed his marked hand gently upon the glowing surface. The surge of memory. The water flared, light bursting outward in ripples. Across the desert, the traveler gasped as visions flooded him, pouring through his hand, his chest, his very soul. He saw caravans lost and caravans arriving safely. their laughter echoing under night skies. He saw children chasing each other between tents, elders telling stories by firelight. He saw storms that buried cities, hands grasping desperately before vanishing beneath waves of sand. He saw not only life, but death, not only joy, but grief, and in each vision, he felt the pulse of existence, the knowledge that every soul, no matter how small, left ripples in the wells. Tears streamed down his cheeks. His heart felt as though it might burst, too full for his body to contain. But through it all, his lantern glowed steady at his side, grounding him. Its silver flame whispered, "You are not lost. You are the carrier, not the drowned." The whisper of the wells, the water's voices rose now, clear and layered. "Seeker, you have walked long. You have resisted lies, carried burdens, faced shadows. Now, you drink of us. You will not carry all, for no vessel can, but you will carry enough." The traveler bowed his head, hand still resting in the glowing water. "I am ready." The voices softened. "Remember what we give. Speak it when others forget. Pass it when silence grows heavy. For memory is the true lantern that guides all journeys." The glow dimmed, calming once more. His hand lifted slowly, drops of blue water clinging to his skin before sinking into the golden threads. His markings shone brighter now, not only with desert fire but with the well's starlight. Closing of the block, the traveler rose unsteadily, breath ragged, heart overflowing. The guardian still stood in silence, but its head inclined faintly, a gesture of respect. The traveler bowed deeply in return. He had not only seen the wells, he had touched them, carried them. The desert was no longer a vast emptiness. It was a living memory, and he was now one of its keepers. As he turned to leave the basin, the wells glowed softly behind him, their ripples stretching outward, whispering into the desert night. "Walk onward, seeker, carry us." Well, the first sip, the traveler cupped his hand and lifted the glowing water to his lips. The moment it touched his tongue, the desert disappeared. The dunes, the stars, even his own lantern all faded into brilliance. He was suspended in a sky of infinite light, each droplet of water unfurling into visions around him. It was as if the wells had opened their endless archives, and he had become the page upon which they wrote lives not his own. He saw a girl weaving cloth in a desert tent, her laughter ringing as she hummed a lullaby older than her people. He saw a soldier, blade heavy with sand, falling to his knees in a storm, whispering his lover's name before silence claimed him. He saw elders passing stories in whispers by the fire, birds carried from one mouth to another until they wove into the fabric of an entire tribe's existence. He saw wanderers who had carried burdens like his, some who made it across, others who fell along the way. Every life was not his, and yet through the water they became part of him. Tears streamed freely. He whispered into the void, "I will remember you." His own forgotten shadows then. The visions turned inward. The wells did not only hold others' lives, they reached into his own, pulling forth the memories he had hidden from himself. He saw himself as a child, barefoot under the sun, running toward his mother's arms. He felt her warmth, her scent of desert herbs, the softness of her voice as she promised him safety. He saw the day she fell ill, the way he had stood helplessly as her light dimmed. He felt again the sharp, unending ache of loss, a wound that had shaped his every step since. He saw himself older, standing at crossroads where he had turned away from home, choosing instead the long road of solitude. He had told himself it was courage, but the wells showed him the truth. It was grief, disguised as resolve. The traveler's knees buckled. "I did not want to remember this," he whispered, voice breaking. The water's voices answered softly. "To carry truth is to carry both light and shadow. You cannot choose one without the other." The lantern within, as his tears fell, the lantern by his side flickered but did not fade. It pulsed steadily, silver flame growing brighter in response to his pain. That the traveler realized then, the lantern was no external guide. It had always been a mirror of his spirit, burning with his resilience, his truth. The market had tried to replace it with false light. The dunes had tried to bury it with despair. But here, by the wells, it glowed brighter than ever, because he no longer hid from memory. He carried it. He whispered, "You are me, and I am you." The lantern's flame rose tall and steady, merging for a moment with the blue glow of the wells. Transformation. The guardian still stood in silence at the basin's edge, but its presence shifted subtly. No longer did it loom as something beyond him, it now seemed like an equal, nodding in acknowledgement. The traveler's marked hand glowed brilliantly, the golden threads, once faint, now coursed with streams of blue starlight, as if the wells themselves had etched their essence into him. He was no longer simply a seeker, he was a bearer of memory. The water within him whispered, countless voices, layered together, "You carry us, walk onward, and let none be forgotten." The farewell of the wells at last. The glow of the wells softened, the visions dimmed, the infinite sky of memory folding back into desert silence. The traveler found himself once more kneeling at the basin, his hand damp, his breath heavy. The night sky returned above, vast and endless. But something fundamental had changed. The desert no longer felt empty. It thrummed with presence, every grain of sand alive with memory. The stars above burned, not just as lights, but as echoes of countless lives. And within him, the wells pulsed gently, like a second heart. He bowed low to the guardian. "I will carry them," he said, voice steady. "I will carry them well." The guardian inclined its head, then stepped back into shadow, dissolving like mist. Rising from the hollow, the traveler stood, lantern steady, hand glowing with etched light. He turned away from the wells and began to climb the dune once more. Each step upward felt heavier, but not with burden, rather with purpose. He carried countless lives now, their joys and sorrows interwoven with his own. The wells grew smaller behind him, their glow sinking into distance, but he knew they would never truly leave him. They had poured themselves into his veins, his voice, his very being. When he reached the crest of the dune, he turned once more for a final glance. The wells shimmered faintly, like a constellation resting upon the earth. Their whispers carried faintly on the wind. "Walk, true bearer. We are with you." He bowed deeply, then faced forward. Closing of the block, the desert stretched wide before him, endless and unknown. Yet, for the first time, he did not feel alone. The voices of the wells whispered softly within him. The lantern glowed brightly at his side. His hand burned with light. He was ready for whatever storms, betrayals, and trials lay ahead. The traveler stepped forward into the night, a bearer of memory, a keeper of light, his journey far from over, but his spirit forever transformed. And the desert, vast and eternal, welcomed him with silence that was no longer empty but alive. The calm before the traveler walked onward, lantern glowing steady by his side, hand etched with starlight from the wells of memory. Each step felt heavier, yet sure. He carried not only himself, but the whispers of countless lives, memories, flowing within him like a second river. The desert, however, was not silent. Its silence had changed. Where once it had been vast emptiness, now it trembled with unseen weight. The wind was too still, the stars too sharp. He paused at the crest of a dune, gazing across the endless expanse. The horizon shimmered faintly, not with water or oasis, but with something darker, edge of shadow creeping slowly across the sky. The desert was preparing. The first Wednesday sigh drifted across the dunes. At first it was nothing, a soft breath like the whisper of memory, but then it grew, pushing against his cloak, tugging at his lantern's flame. He steadied himself, eyes narrowing. The wind rose, swirling around him, carrying sharp grains of sand. They struck his face, his hands, stinging lightly. The lantern flickered but did not falter. The traveler whispered to himself, "So this is the storm, the desert's final voice." The wind howled louder, sweeping dunes into motion. The ground shifted beneath his boots as if the earth itself sought to swallow him. Shadows in the sand through the rising storm. He began to see them half-formed, emerging from the swirls of dust. At first he thought them illusions, like those he had seen before. But these were darker. Their faces were hidden, their movements jagged. They circled him, their forms twisting like smoke. One stepped closer, its voice rasping, "You carry too much. Lay it down. Give it to us." Another hissed, "Memories are a burden. They will break you. Share them with us, and you will walk free." The traveler gripped his lantern tightly, shaking his head. "No, I was given these not to abandon, but to carry." The shadows hissed in unison, swirling tighter around him. The betrayal within. As the storm thickened, one of the shadows stepped closer than the rest. Its form twisted, and suddenly it was no longer faceless. It wore his face. The traveler froze. The shadow self smirked, its lantern burning not silver but black flame. "You think you carry memory," it sneered, "but you only carry weight. You fool yourself with words, but you will break, as all do. Give it to me, and I will walk for you. The traveler's throat tightened. To see himself in the storms, darkness, twisted and falsate, shook him deeper than any phantom before. He whispered, "You are not me." The shadow laughed. "I am every part of you you try to hide. The fear, the doubt, the desire to give in. Without me, you are hollow." The desert howled louder, sand slashing across his skin, tearing at his cloak. The lantern's answer for a moment. The traveler wavered. The storm was overwhelming. The shadows pressed close, their whispers rising like a chorus of despair. But then his lantern pulsed. Its silver flame burned high, steady despite the wind, casting light across the storm. The shadows recoiled, writhing in its glow. The traveler raised it high, voice steady despite the roar. "You are not my end. You are my trial, and I do not walk with lies." The shadow self hissed, its form flickering. "Without me, you are nothing." But before it could finish, the lantern's flame surged, washing across it. The false self dissolved into the storm, shredded into nothingness. The other shadows shrieked, scattering back into the dunes, fading like smoke. The traveler stood alone once more, the wind still fierce, but the air cleaner somehow, lighter. The heart of the storm, the desert, was not done. The wind roared higher, lifting whole dunes into the air. Sand poured around him like a river, choking the sky, blotting out stars. Thought the traveler pulled his cloak tight, leaning into the gale. Each step forward was agony, as though the storm sought to drive him backward, to bury him in endless sand. But his lantern cut a path, its silver light piercing the chaos. Step by step, he pressed forward, breath ragged, body aching. And through it all, the voices of the wells whispered within him, "Carry us. Do not falter. We are with you." The eye of silence. Then suddenly, the wind broke. He stumbled into a hollow at the storm's center, where silence reigned once more. The sands swirled around the edges, but here, in the eye of the storm, there was stillness. He collapsed to his knees, breath heaving, body trembling with exhaustion. His lantern floated before him, steady, its flame unwavering. The silence pressed deep, heavier than even the storm, and in that silence, a single truth echoed in his chest. He had faced the market's temptations. He had carried the well's memory, and now he had stood against his own shadow. The desert had tested him with all it had, and still he walked. Closing of the block, the traveler rose slowly, gripping his lantern tight. His body ached, his cloak torn, his skin raw, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. The storm still raged around him, but he no longer feared it. He had seen its heart, and it had not broken him. He stepped forward, ready for the final stretch. The valley of dreams lay beyond, and the desert, vast and eternal, had given him permission to continue. The storm tightens. The silence of the storm's eye did not last long. The moment the traveler took his next step, the desert roared again. Wind lashed around him, hurling sand so violently that the air turned into a wall of dust. He shielded his face with one arm, gripping the lantern tightly with the other. The storm was alive. It screamed like 1,000 voices crying out at once, wailing through the dunes, pressing against him from every side. The sand was no longer just sand, it was memory, fragments of countless lives carried in the storm's fury. Each grain stung his skin like the sting of a forgotten sorrow. He whispered, half to himself, half to the desert, "You will not break me. I walk still." The cries of the pastas, the storm pressed tighter. The wind began to shape voices clearer than before. "You left us," one voice cried, echoing like a phantom. "You turned away when we needed you most. You carry memory, but you cannot change it," another accused. "You walk with ghosts, but you cannot bring them back." The traveler stumbled, heart clenching. These were not strangers' voices. They were his own regrets, spoken aloud by the storm. He saw flashes in the swirling sand, his mother's fading smile, his village fading into distance as he turned away, the moments where he chose solitude instead of reaching out. His chest tightened painfully. "Am I walking only for myself?" he wondered, shaken. The weight of guilt. The storm thickened, and the shadows within it sharpened. He saw again his shadow self, but now multiplied, dozens of versions of himself circling him. Each one bore a different flaw: fear, cowardice, anger, despair. They moved around him in a ring, voices overlapping. "You abandoned hope. You are selfish. You cannot bear this burden. You will drown in what you carry." The traveler dropped to one knee, sand whipping across his body. His hand shook around the lantern. For a moment, he almost believed him. But then the lantern's flame pulsed again. Steady, unwavering. He lifted his gaze, forcing himself to meet their eyes. "Yes," he said hoarsely. "I carry flaws. I carry regrets, but they do not own me. They walk with me, but they do not lead." The shadow selves hissed, recoiling. One by one, they unraveled back into the storm. The lantern burns bright. The storm roared louder, angry at his resistance. Lightning split the sky above, jagged arcs illuminating the dunes. Thunder rolled across the desert, shaking the very sand beneath his feet. But his lantern only grew brighter, its silver flame piercing through the chaos. He raised it high, its glow spilling across the storm like a shield. For the first time, the storm seemed to falter, the swirling sand slowing slightly under its light. He realized then the lantern was no longer just a guide. It was a weapon, forged from memory, truth, and his own unyielding will. "You cannot bury me," he shouted into the gale, "for I am already one with what you try to bury. I carry memory, and memory cannot die." The storm shrieked, wind slamming against him in fury. The breaking point, the sand lifted higher, rising like waves of an ocean, towering above him. For a heartbeat, it seemed impossible to move forward. The traveler braced himself, planting his feet firmly. His body trembled with exhaustion, but he did not step back. "If this is the desert's last test," he murmured, voice raw, "then let it come. I do not fear you." The wall of sand crashed down around him, swallowing him whole. The light within the storm. For a moment, he was buried sand, pressing into his lungs, filling his ears, drowning his senses. It felt like the end, suffocating and final. But then, deep within the crushing dark, the lantern's flame burned. Not faintly, not barely, but with brilliance. It burst outward, silver fire blazing against the suffocating sand. The storm shrieked as the light spread, burning through the weight, scattering the suffocating shadows. The traveler gasped, air rushing back into his chest. He rose from the dunes, lantern held high, its glow a pillar piercing through the storm. The storm howled, sand scattering into the sky like shattered glass. The eye expands, the raging winds began to pull back, swirling outward, forming a great hollow in the desert. At the center of that hollow, the traveler stood, lantern burning bright, cloak torn, body battered, but unbroken. The silence returned, heavy and sacred. The storm had not ended, but it had bent before him, and in that silence, the desert spoke not in voices, not in illusions, but in pure stillness, as if acknowledging him. He had passed through shadow, storm, and memory. He was still standing. Closing of the block, the traveler lowered his lantern slowly, breathing heavily, his body aching but his spirit steady. The storm no longer frightened him. It was vast, it was merciless, but it was also alive, and in some way, he was now part of it. As the winds softened at the edges of the hollow, he looked forward. Somewhere beyond the last dunes lay the Valley of Dreams. And now, after the storm's fury, he was ready to walk into it. Rising from the sands, the traveler staggered forward, each step heavy with exhaustion. The storm still roared behind him, but its strength was fading, like a great beast retreating into its lair. Sand clung to his cloak, filled his boots, pressed into every line of his skin, yet his lantern's silver flame burned clean and bright, untouched by the filth of the storm. He realized then that the desert had not sought to destroy him. It had sought to strip him bare, to bury everything false and fragile, until only the truth remained. And here he was, still walking, not as the man who had begun the journey, but as someone reborn. The silence after the storm, when the wind finally stilled. Silence fell heavier than ever. The dunes around him lay reshaped, carved into new ridges by the storm's fury. The sky above was clearer than he had ever seen, stars gleaming like silver coins scattered upon black silk. He paused, letting the silence sink into him. It was not the emptiness he had once feared. Now, the silence felt full, echoing with every memory he carried, every trial he had passed. The desert no longer seemed endless and cruel. It seemed alive, as though it watched him, respected him. "I have walked with you," he whispered, "and you have walked with me." The inner rebirth sank to his knees, setting the lantern gently in the sand before him. Its flame pulsed steadily, like a heartbeat. For the first time, he truly looked inward. He saw the child he once was, still barefoot, still laughing. He saw the man who had grieved, wandering alone with hollow eyes. He saw the seeker who had nearly surrendered to temptation at the market of echoes. And then he saw himself now weathered, scarred, but carrying the wells of memory within him, carrying light through shadow, carrying countless lives across the desert. The storm had not only tested him, it had reshaped him. "I am not broken," he whispered. "I am carried. I am carved. I am made new." The lantern flared in response, its silver light brightening as though agreeing. The vision of the valleys, his eyes lifted. The horizon shifted. Through the last veil of sand, he glimpsed something faint, glimmering lights far in the distance. Not lanterns, not stars, but something gentler, softer. A glow that did not belong to illusion or storm. The valley of dreams. His heart leaped, though his body ached. He knew it was still far, many dunes away, but for the first time, he could see it, and seeing it filled him with strength. He rose again, clutching his lantern. His steps were unsteady, but purposeful. The desert had stripped him down, but now every stride carried the weight of countless lives behind it. The companions of memory as he walked. The voices of the wells whispered softly, no longer cries or burdens, but companions. "Do you remember us?" A child's laughter echoed gently. "Carry us well," a mother's voice hummed. "Speak when others forget," whispered an elder's tone. The memories did not weigh him down now. They walked beside him, like unseen companions, moving in step. With his stride, he no longer felt alone. Every voice, every story, every fragment of the wells had become part of his caravan. The desert stretched wide, but he was no longer just a single figure crossing it. He was thousands, walking as one. The lantern, as a star the lantern floated, a step ahead of him now. No longer simply a tool, but a symbol. Its flame burned with the well's starlight, with the desert's truth, with his own resilience. He realized with wonder that it was not guiding him outward, it was guiding him inward, to the valley that already existed within his heart. The external valley was only a reflection of what he had uncovered inside, and yet he walked onward, for both journeys mattered, the one through the dunes, and the one within. The whisper of betrayal as the night deepened. One final whisper rose from the sand. "What if the valley does not welcome you?" The voice was sly, familiar, his shadow self, not yet fully gone. The traveler paused, gazing at the faint glow ahead. His hand tightened on the lantern. "Then I will walk still," he answered quietly. "For the journey itself is the valley. To walk is to arrive." The voice faded, dissolving at last into the desert silence. Closing of the block, the traveler pressed onward, lantern bright, steps slow but unyielding. The storm was behind him. The valley lay ahead, and within him, the wells of memory pulsed, softly, their whispers no longer heavy but harmonious. He was no longer merely crossing the desert. He had become part of its eternal story. The weight of stillness the storm had scattered, its voice had dwindled into silence. Leaving the desert sculpted anew, the traveler stood tall upon a dune, lantern glowing beside him. His body ached with fatigue, his cloak hung in tatters, but his spirit felt steady as stone. The fury of the desert had tried to bury him, yet here he remained, breathing, walking, carrying light. He let the silence soak into him. Once, silence had frightened him. It had felt like emptiness, like loneliness stretched endless. But now he understood silence was not absence. It was fullness, alive with every memory, every whisper he carried. The desert was no longer an enemy. It was his companion. Footsteps across new dunes. The storm had shifted the landscape. Where once familiar ridges had lain, now new dunes rose like mountains, their slopes sharp and alien. Every step was uncertain, his boots sinking into sand that gave way beneath him. Yet he walked with patience. The well's whispers still echoed gently within, guiding his rhythm. "Steady," they murmured, "every step carries more than you alone." The traveler felt their truth. He was no longer just a wanderer chasing a dream. He was a bearer, a vessel for voices long forgotten. Each stride carried their weight, their stories, their hope. The lantern ahead glowed like a star fallen into the desert, showing him where to place each foot. Echoes of companionship. As he crossed a long ridge, he felt something strange, echo of laughter brushing against the wind. He turned, half expecting to see faces beside him, and in a way, he did that. Through the shimmering haze, he glimpsed forms walking with him, a child skipping lightly, an elder leaning on a staff, a woman humming softly, a warrior carrying his blade. They were not physical, but they were present. The traveler smiled faintly. He was not alone. He whispered, "I will walk for all of you. Together, we will see the valley." The voices in the wind hummed softly in reply, their presence steady at his side. The fading fear night deepened as he walked. The sky a velvet sheet stitched with stars. For the first time in countless nights, the traveler realized he was not afraid. The storm had taken his fear and shattered it. His shadow self had tried to bind him, but it had burned away in the lantern's light. Now, even the vastness of the desert seemed less daunting. The emptiness was no longer emptiness. It was space for memory, for story, for light to grow. The valley ahead glimmered faintly, and though it was still far, he trusted that his steps would lead him there. A whisper of doubt still. The desert was not done testing him. As he descended a slope, a faint whisper touched his ear. What if the valley is only a mirage? He paused, staring at the glowing horizon. Was it real? Or was it another illusion? A trick of the sands? He closed his eyes, listening inward. The well's voices answered gently. Whether mirage or truth, you carry us. That is enough. The traveler opened his eyes, steady once more. Then I will walk, even if the valley fades. For walking itself is the dream. The whisper dissolved, carried away by the desert wind. Lantern of defiancy pressed onward. His lantern pulsed brighter with each step, as though it fed on his resolve. Its silver flame reached higher, gleaming across the dunes like a beacon. If the desert watched him, it now saw a figure who no longer trembled, who no longer faltered. A figure walking not for himself, but for all voices carried within. The lantern's light spilled across the sands, and the shadows of doubt fell back. For the first time, the traveler realized his lantern no longer needed to be carried. It floated freely, glowing as though it had become part of the desert sky. It was no longer only his, it was theirs all, the memories, all the lives, the crest before the valley at last. He climbed a towering dune, each step dragging but determined. His breath was heavy, but his eyes were sharp, locked on the horizon. When he reached the crest, he paused, chest heaving, lantern steady at his side. And there beyond the rolling waves of sand he saw it more clearly than ever, the Valley of Dreams. Its glow spread softly across the horizon, not blinding, not false, but gentle and real. Palms shimmered faintly in silver lights. Water gleamed like glass kissed by stars. It was no longer a whisper, no longer a doubt. It was there, waiting. The traveler's eyes filled with tears. "I have walked so far," he whispered, "and still I walk." Closing of the block, he stood at the crest of the dune, lantern burning bright, voices of memory steady in his heart. The storm was behind him. The valley was ahead. Chunk one of his final journey had brought him through fury, shadow, and silence. He had been broken down and remade, and now, with a steady step, he began the final descent toward the Valley of Dreams. The descent toward light. The traveler descended slowly from the dune's crest, his lantern glowing like a patient star beside him. His body still ached from the storm, his muscles weary, but each step felt lighter now. The Valley of Dreams shimmered ahead, no longer a trick of the eye, but a soft and steady glow. He had seen many mirages. He had seen illusions born of thirst and despair. But this light did not fade as he walked. If anything, it grew brighter, clearer, truer. The desert air shifted. It was still dry, still vast, but there was a gentleness to the wind now, as though the storm had given way to a tender breath. The traveler inhaled deeply. The air no longer scraped like fire in his lungs. It felt cool, carrying the faintest trace of water. "I am close," he whispered. The voices of the wells echoed faintly within him, closer than ever. The valley revealed hours passed as he crossed the last long ridges of sand. Night deepened, and the stars overhead burned with sharp brilliance. The lantern's silver flame shimmered in harmony, weaving with their light. Finally, as he climbed one last dune, the Valley of Dreams spread before him in its full majesty. It was unlike anything he had seen. The valley lay cradled between two vast ridges of sand, as though the desert itself had split to shelter it. Palms swayed gently, their leaves silvered by starlight. Pools of water reflected the heavens, their surfaces so still they seemed like mirrors placed upon the earth. And within the valley, lanterns hung from unseen branches, glowing softly, their lights neither fire nor flame, but something purer, Each lantern pulsed with a heartbeat, as if alive. The traveler's breath caught, his heart pounded with awe, with relief, with wonder. Tears blurred his vision. "It is real," he whispered. "After all this, it is real. The guardians of the valley is." He stepped toward the valley's edge. He saw them, figures cloaked in silver robes, their faces hidden by veils of light, emerged from between the palms. They carried lanterns like his, each flame different yet harmonious. The traveler froze, lantern steady in his hand. One of the guardians raised a hand in welcome. Their voice flowed like water, soft and calm. "You have crossed the sands. You have carried memory. You have stood against shadow. You are welcome here." The traveler lowered his head, humbled. "I have walked so far. I have faltered. I have doubted. But I have carried the wells, and they have carried me. I come not as one alone, but as many." The guardians bowed their heads slightly. "Then, you are ready." The ritual of light. They led him into the heart of the valley. There, beneath a great tree whose branches glittered with silver leaves, stood a basin of crystal water. Around it, lanterns floated gently, their flames pulsing with countless colors: blue, gold, silver, violet. Each flame flickered in rhythm, as though they breathed together. The traveler's lantern glowed brighter, its flame eager, restless. A guardian gestured to the basin. "Every traveler who crosses the desert brings their lantern here. Its flame joins with the valley, and in return, the valley gifts its dream." The traveler hesitated, staring at his lantern. It had been with him through every step, the market, the wells, the storm. He had thought it part of him, but he understood now. It was never only his. With trembling hands, he lifted it gently, stepping toward the basin. The flame pulsed once, as though bidding him farewell. Then, as he set the lantern upon the water, it floated freely. Its silver light flared high, merging with the other flames, until the basin glowed like a small sun. The voices of the wells stirred inside him, then quieted, flowing into the light. For the first time, the burden lifted from his chest, lost but shared, carried now by the valley itself. The dream gift. The basin shimmered, the water rippled, glowing softly. The guardians stepped back, their voices united. "Now receive what you have given." The traveler knelt beside the basin, peering into its depths. At first, he saw only his reflection, tired eyes, scarred skin, a cloak torn by storms. But then, the water shifted. He saw the village of his youth, alive with laughter. He saw faces he had lost, smiling, their eyes bright and warm. He saw himself as a child, running barefoot across soft sand. The images shifted again. He saw the desert not as emptiness, but as a vast tapestry woven with memory, dream, and story. He saw caravans walking forever, lanterns guiding them, voices carried across dunes like eternal echoes. Tears streamed down his cheeks. For the first time in years, he felt whole. The basin whispered, "You carry not weight, but light. Memory is not burden, it is life." The night of rest, the guardians prepared a resting place for him beneath the great silver tree, its branches whispered in the breeze, its roots humming with ancient strength. For the first time in endless nights, the traveler lay down upon soft ground. The air was cool, scented with palms and water. The voices of memory no longer cried out. They hummed softly, like a lullaby. As his eyes closed, he realized he was not afraid to dream. The valley of dreams had accepted him. Sleep, deep and peaceful, claimed him. The dawn of new steps. When he awoke, the sky was painted with dawn. Gold spilled across the valley, turning the waters into molten mirrors, the palms into living emerald. The guardians stood silently, their lanterns still glowing. One spoke softly, "Your journey through the desert is complete, but journeys never truly end. From here, you may choose stay and dream forever, or walk again, carrying the valley within you." The traveler rose slowly, his heart calm. He gazed at the valley's beauty, then at the horizon beyond. "The desert still waits," he said softly. "Others still walk, others still carry weight. I will walk again, and when they falter, I will carry them too." The guardians bowed. "Then you are more than a traveler. You are now a bearer of dreams." Closing of the tale with the valley's light glowing gently inside him, the traveler stepped once more onto the sands. The desert stretched wide, endless as ever, but it no longer felt cruel. It felt alive, breathing with every story, every echo, every dream. His steps were steady, his spirit was calm, his lantern was gone, yet its light remained within him. And as he walked, He knew he was not alone. The desert walked with him. The wells sang within him. The valley glowed ahead and behind. The secret train of travelers through the desert, the endless caravan of memory had gained another bearer. And so, beneath the eternal sky, the traveler continued on. Not to escape, not to arrive, but to walk. Forever part of the dream.